Welcome back to Innovate 2021. I'm Capture CEO Len Napolitano, and this is day 2 of our national 2-day virtual conference, streaming live across the globe on 5 platforms and being broadcasted from over a dozen U.S. cities. At Capture, we feel so lucky to be part of this dedicated and talented community of higher education, enrollment, and marketing professionals. To the over 1,000 participants of Innovate 2021, we appreciate that you've chosen to spend your time with us. I know this is often a transitional time in your offices as you finish up what probably appears to be one of the strangest and craziest recruitment cycles of your career. And as you gear up for fall of 22, thank you. At Capture, we believe in making every interaction count. With our behavioral intelligence platform that combines marketing automation and predictive modeling, supported by a team of experts integrating digital advertising and CRMs, we enable institutions to identify, convert, and enroll the right students. With our help, hundreds of colleges and programs from across the country are making personalized, data-driven, timely, and measured connections with prospective students. With Innovate 2021, we've endeavored to gather the higher education, enrollment, and marketing community, from leaders to counselors to marketing professionals to creative experts like all of you from across the globe to talk strategies, solutions, and trends. And we hope you come away from the next 2 days with clear and creative actionable strategies, insight to the tools and resources institutions like yours are using to face today's growing recruitment challenges, and new ideas about brand building and brand awareness. And perhaps most importantly, we want you to come out of Innovate motivated and determined to achieve your goals and shape our next generation of leaders. If you joined us yesterday, you heard our opening keynote speaker, Dr. Natalie Nixon, talk about using creativity to navigate uncertainty. You also learned how Jacksonville University is using a multi-channel marketing strategy to grow and build their pool of graduate inquiries. And lastly, our partners in Innovation Platform Q joined forces with us to demonstrate how schools are combining behavioral intelligence with continuous content to great effect. And we ended the day with the panel discussion of higher education enrollment leaders talking about what new strategies and virtual methods they're going to deploy post-pandemic. Though it's going to be difficult to top, we're going to try to do it in day 2. And I'm really looking forward to today's opening session because I, in a few minutes, have the opportunity to interview Dr. Wesley Fugate, president of Wilson College, to discuss his diversity, equity, and inclusivity initiative and how it's impacting enrollment management. Our theme for Innovate 2021 is clarity and creativity. And at 2:45, Capture's data scientist, John Foster, and the University of Toledo's Director of Admissions, Colin Palmer, apply this theme to data in their presentation, using data clarity to inform your creativity. Also today, we have 2 sessions that deal with the all-important issue of branding. At 2:05, Beth Kazarakis from the University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy in St. Louis will talk about putting a new brand to work for student recruitment. And then our closing keynote, The Art and Science of Brand Building, will be presented by Matt Blevins, Global Brand Director at Brown-Forman. During his session, he'll help attendees understand the latest evidence-based ways to build their brand and reach their audience. He'll also share his experiences building one of the world's most iconic brands and how to apply these lessons to other brand building efforts. Like yesterday, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the sessions. Just enter your questions in the comment section of whatever platform you're attending Innovate on. But before I begin, there are a few housekeeping notes I'd like to share with you. One, today we'll be giving away the second of 2 $500 merit-based scholarships for a student to attend your institution. Other prizes include AirPods, an Apple Watch, $100 Amazon gift cards, all access master class passes, and a trip to Paris, Kentucky with me. Like yesterday, the prizes will be raffled off to those who share Capture's LinkedIn post. To qualify for today's drawings, go to your LinkedIn account, share our post with a comment, and use the hashtag Innovate 2021. Simply share with your network that you're attending Innovate to win a $100 Amazon gift card or a pair of earbuds. Posts are being monitored and winners will be selected at random throughout today's event. Also, I'm pleased to share for the second year in a row, Innovate 2021 will have a philanthropy component. Throughout the conference, Capture will match attendee donations up to $5,000 for the Boys and Girls Club of America and the National Urban League. These outstanding organizations are doing important work in all of our communities, and we're proud to support them. Look out for a link on where to donate, which we are sharing throughout the conference and also on all of our social media platforms. And for day 2 of Innovate 2021, your MCs once again will be Heather Mueller and Lauren Gold. Heather has been a key member of our organization since its inception and a member of our leadership team. Prior to joining Capture, she held a variety of leadership positions in enrollment management at institutions such as Lincoln College in Illinois, Thomas University in Georgia, Rutgers University, and Illinois State University. Also, Heather's experience and knowledge has been instrumental in deploying the behavioral intelligence platform across hundreds of programs and colleges across colleges and universities in America, enabling them to identify, convert, and enroll the right students and exceed their goals. Lauren, many of you probably already know, is our Director of Account Executives and Account Management and has been with the company for nearly 4 years. Prior to Capture, Lauren served as the leader for Sullivan University Systems undergraduate teams that support 7 campuses. Today, in her role leading our account management organization, her team of higher education professionals and executives execute our client strategic plans and help them meet and exceed their enrollment goals using Capture's offering. You'll be seeing Heather and Lauren throughout the day as they recap previous conversations, introduce upcoming sessions, take your questions and comments, announce raffle winners, probably have a bit of banter and much, much more. Also, if you have questions about Capture or any of today's sessions, ask them privately, whether today or anytime after today's event. Now, let's kick off day 2 of Innovate 21 with our first keynote speaker, Wilson College's president, Dr. Wesley Fugate, talking about his diversity, equity, and inclusivity initiatives at the school and how they impact enrollment management. Dr. Fugate is Wilson's College's 20th president, and since his arrival, he has steered Wilson through the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting economic challenges. Under his leadership, the college has launched a strategic planning process set to be approved this year that has resulted in 6 new undergraduate programs, 1 new degree completion program, 1 new graduate program, and 1 new endorsement. But he's not done yet. Additionally, something we'll learn more about over the next few minutes is Dr. Fugate has created the President's Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and also appointed task groups to help strengthen Wilson's financial position. Dr. Fugate's short but highly eventful tenure at Wilson has been marked by open communication, transparency, and collaboration. He is known for his many town hall meetings to keep various constituents informed about the college's progress, and the community has responded. In fact, alumni and friends of the college's support of the fund has grown by 25%. Prior to his appointment at Wilson, Dr. Fugate served Randolph College in Virginia in a variety of roles: Vice President of Student Affairs and Dean of Students, Vice President and Chief of Staff and Secretary of Board of Trustees, and Interim Vice President of Enrollment. Previously, he served as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Planning and Education Policy to the Governor of Kentucky. And before that, he was Director of Events for a national political party's victory efforts, where he coordinated events for the President, Vice President, and First Lady of the United States, as well as a myriad of other high-ranking officials. A first-generation college student and native of Eastern Kentucky, Dr. Fugate earned a doctorate in higher education from the University of Georgia's Institute of Higher Education, a master's degree from Vanderbilt University, and a bachelor's degree from Centre College. He and his husband, Corey, reside at Sharp House on Wilson's campus, along with Miss Charlotte, the college's unofficial mascot. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Wesley Fugate.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I am so excited to talk about your initiatives, what it means to the college, and also what it means to enrollment management. But before I begin with my questions, I do have an unplanned question to ask you.
Sure.
Okay. In your bio, you shared with us that you were an interim vice president of enrollment. And to our audience, you've earned some street cred now. What was the toughest part of that job that you didn't realize how tough it was?
Well, first, enrollment management has always been a passion of mine. So, from my undergraduate days, I was deeply involved with enrollment work. And when I got placed into the interim role, I think the hardest part is that the president asked me very quickly to make an assessment of the division and implement change very, very quickly. And so, for a number of weeks, I spent, you know, day after day, just meeting after meeting, learning more about the enrollment operations and how I could make an impact on future enrollment as quickly as possible. And things have changed considerably in this industry. It's constantly evolving, and particularly the role that technology plays in that. And so, getting up to speed on that was a lot.
So before we go into the construct of your plan, can you share with us a little bit more about Wilson College for our audience?
Sure. So Wilson is a great place. We're a college of about 1,500 students located in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, an idyllic college campus. And we were founded about 152 years ago as a place to educate women. So we've always had a little bit of a social justice focus as a part of our history. Today, we are a place that serves about 1,000 traditional undergraduate students, but 500 adult students. And within that population, we have maybe 350 that live on campus. So we have a wide variety of students serving a lot of different constituencies.
It seems, just with your unique mission and for a century of this mission, the creation of your DEI plan and aligning it to your mission was probably what it appears, a natural fit. Can you give some examples of tangible examples of that fit and how you connected the two, for your constituents and for your community?
Sure. Well, think about us as a place that was founded as a college for women. So we've always been about providing access to higher education to those who haven't always had it. And that's continued throughout our history. So if you think about us as an institution, we have added in over time other populations that need to have access to higher education. For example, men returning from war or adult students, or a program we're very proud of, single parents. We provide an amazing program for single parents. And most recently, a really unique focus on affordability. We over the last 14 years, have only increased tuition twice. We have cut tuition once. We're still the same price that we were about 14 years ago. It's a pretty remarkable story about how we continue to lean into that. But as you see, our newly created and approved by our Board of Trustees vision and mission statement, justice is a part of who we are. Transforming lives is a part of who we are, and making sure that no matter who that student is, that they can be transformed at Wilson College is just a part of our DNA.
I am personally very excited to see that you added justice to your mission statement. And it kind of ties into my next question, just being the month that we're in. How has being an openly gay college president influenced your plan? And just not only influence your plan, but also when you think of the role that you play and the role the college plays.
Well, I think for marginalized communities, having someone who is a member of one of those communities leading the institution helps that leader develop some street cred, if you will. Not that I have had a shared experience with every marginalized community, but I think people understand that I have had challenges in my life based on my identity, and that in some ways means that I can understand and empathize with them in a unique way. But in essence, I'm just Wes. I'm not gay Wes. I lean into my relationship. My husband attends events with me. I talk about him openly. But I think people are appreciating the fact that I am just who I am and not shy about it. And then I am proud to speak out about making sure that our campus is as diverse, inclusive, and equitable as we can be.
I'm going to ask a question that you weren't prepared for, but can you think about a way that you've been able to take, as what you just mentioned about other communities, a way that you've been able to put that into action, for other communities maybe to feel stronger?
Yeah, well, the first thing is a listening tour. So having only been here 18
Mhm.
months, one of the first things that I did is I wanted to talk to various populations. And so, the BSU saw me very early on and I wanted to hear their story. They wanted me to talk, I think, but I wanted to hear from them. But it's also the little things. So, for example, when we moved into Sharp House, I wanted to make sure that there was art on the walls that represented diverse populations. And so, I now have hanging in my office a piece of art that was created by a diverse faculty member. I have a piece of art that demonstrates my commitment to our Black student community. So making sure that there are small things that I'm doing, expressing to those communities that I'm here to listen and here to help make change possible and happen.
I think that's I think that's awesome, especially with the artwork. I mean, like you said, it's the small and big things. And so can you go into now the big things, those core tenets of your plan? And then what are some of the milestones that you've put into place and ways to measure it, right? And because what the faculty might seem as great, you're listening to us, students might say, hey, that's that's not reflective of what we need. So if you can maybe talk at maybe different levels or however
Sure.
you feel comfortable sharing with us.
So I appointed the President's Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and involved constituents from throughout the institution. So faculty, staff, students, alums, all coming together to share ideas. I issued a charge to them, and then I stepped away and said, "This is your work. I don't want to influence the plan. I want you to, talk to others, share your feedback, and then and bring a plan to me. I'll react to that plan and share some of my opinions with you. You can choose whether or not you want to take that or not." And then I'm going to take what you give me as a final product and I'm going to put it before the Board of Trustees and share it with them and say, this is what our community is telling us we need to do. So they came back with 24 initiatives. It's set over 3 different time periods, 6 months, 18 months, and up to 3 years. Now, I have to tell you, there's a lot in those 24 initiatives. Are we going to be able to accomplish all of those? Maybe not. It would require a lot of resources to be able to accomplish some of those items. But I'm really proud of the list of things that have come about. So you would see things like acknowledging our history and where we maybe had failures, talking about the language we use and how it might not always be inclusive, how we might be able to train various members of our community, how we simply make sure that our numbers on campus are more higher diverse communities, whether that be on committees, faculty and staff, our board of trustees. A big part of our challenge is we have a generally inclusive campus community. We have a lot of work still left to do, but we also have challenges outside of our campus community. And so while we have a large number of diverse students and it's growing every day, while we are a place that serves a lot of women based on our history, that we are a place that has a lot of first generation college students and Pell Grant recipients, that we acknowledge that maybe outside of the safety of the Wilson College campus, people are not as diverse as we are, that they may not be as welcoming and inclusive as we are. So we're forming partnerships with folks in the community, whether it be our borough and our city leadership, to a local racial reconciliation group, to a group that focuses on low income families. And how do we get out there and work with those groups to really change Chambersburg and Franklin County, Pennsylvania, to be a place that's welcoming to all?
Uh, I'm, I'm gonna be a bit persnickety, but was it really hard for you to step away from this? Because did you really want to get involved and be like, hey, participate?
Well, of course I did.
Yes.
There has been a lot going on in the past year or so for college presidents. So
Yeah.
in some ways, it was nice to be able to give a group of people that I really trusted to go and do great work, come back and let me react to it. I find that's a great leadership skill, is if you can trust your team to go do something and then come back and bring those ideas to you for you to react to. But of course, when it got to me, I did share some feedback. And, I'll give you one example. The plan originally did not speak as well to diversity of thought as I had hoped. Political thought, for example. We are in a very, very, very conservative area politically. Our campus might lean perhaps a little bit more to the left, but how do we make sure that we provide a space for all people, no matter what their background, to have discourse around important issues facing our country and world?
Before I get how you tie this into marketing, recruitment, and enrollment management, I would like to share with the group that you are quite a thespian. You have performed in a number of shows, to include Gypsy, Wizard of Oz, Cinderella, Peter Pan, Carnival, My Fair Lady. I think I've named just a few of the shows you've participated in. Is that correct?
Wow, I'm impressed. You've done some research.
I did, and I understand that you were the star of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.
Yeah, that was actually my senior project, was to work with my identical twin Les, and we produced our own show, entirely student created. So every set design, every piece of scenery that was built, costumes, everything was completely student run.
You played the role of a pretty important character.
Yeah, Pseudolus, he was the main character in the piece.
He was, and I think he started off the show with the opening number. I think the song was A Comedy Tonight. Was that his opening number?
Indeed it was.
Can we get a few verses?
Oh my
Asking
goodness.
for a friend.
Well, I maybe not for verses, but how about the opening line, which is, "Playgoers, I bid you welcome. The theater is a temple, and we are here to worship the gods of comedy and tragedy. Tonight, I am pleased to announce a comedy."
So I'm not going to get a little musical ditty.
Oh, I would hate to put your viewers through that torture.
Okay. So I want to now hear how you're taking your initiatives and now incorporating them into marketing and enrollment, right? Because now, we talked about the community, we talked about the physical presence on campus, you mentioned some things about faculty, but for our audience, it's now saying, hey, how do I take this presidential initiative, and what are some of the things that you're going to be doing that maybe they can learn from?
Well, the first thing that I would say is authenticity, authenticity, authenticity. I think our students are unbelievably savvy. They can tell when they're being marketed to. And if we are just putting diversity and inclusion efforts in front of their face to make it sound like we are a great place for diverse populations, they will see right through that. So, how do you put that plan on your website and allow them to find it? Does it come up in your SEO work, for example? But I also think just living into the plan is the best marketing you can do. So really creating the space that makes that environment a positive place. Of course, I would say, and as all of you know, you need to make sure that you are inclusive of all of the various populations when you're picking the students that you're going to feature, or the faculty members that you're going to feature, because people want to see people that look like them, understand their challenges. But authenticity is so important to this marketing work. Now, the other thing that I do is I speak about these values all the time. It's in the messages that I deliver to open house events or admitted student days. I will, shout it from the rooftops wherever I can. And that sends a signal that it's a really important priority about the institution. And then our marketing team can take that and use it when they need to. Or an admissions counselor can say, hey, our president speaks about this often. It's something that he's very passionate about. But I would be cautious about overdoing it too much, because that makes it feel not truly authentic to the institution, and it will feel like the purpose is really about marketing. And I don't think it really is. I think we're doing this work because we want to provide a space for students from all backgrounds to receive a great education.
I want to go into a tactical question about marketing in that, there are hundreds, if not thousands of colleges across the country that are a similar relationship of your town and gown, the town and gown relationship. The school, might be taking a position that traditionally is not similar, that is contradictory to that of its geographic location. What are things that you're doing to maybe say, this is a great community, both the college and the greater community? So, look at in a different light. What are some of the ways that you're presenting that? Because I'm sure that challenge is not unique to you, as there are many small liberal arts colleges or small regional institutions that there might be, positions that are distinct from their regional environment or the perception of that regional environment.
Yeah, well, I have a unique background in the fact that I've worked in government before. I've worked in conservative politics and liberal politics. And so I can come into any conversation and find common ground in a world today where there isn't a lot of common ground, I feel like. And so I'm really passionate about making sure that the institution is out in the community being visible so that we can enter into conversation with others. Mm-hmm. So, it can be as small as, can we have a seat on the police chief's advisory committee? It can be as large as something that I'm about to do to testify before our borough council committee on creating a non-discrimination ordinance. And doing that not only from the perspective as a gay man, but as an employer of 300 employees and an institution that has a $68 million economic impact. I also talk often about the things that I love about our community. I don't want people to think that I don't love being here. I really enjoy being a part of Chambersburg, but I want to see it be an even better Chambersburg. So I'm involved in the borough's comprehensive planning committee. We put up banners in downtown that say, "Welcome to Chambersburg, home of Wilson College." We want people to have pride in Wilson, and just as much as we have pride in our community, but people need to hear that from me, and they need to see that the college is passionate about being a contributor to our local economy and to our community.
Do you find that relationship that you're creating, that involvement with the borough, your participation, is that something that's new to this role, or is that something that the president of Wilson has always fulfilled that role?
Well, I think various presidents have done it in different ways. Mm-hmm. Some have delegated that work to cabinet members. This is work that I really enjoy doing. And frankly, since our transition just less than a decade ago from single sex to a co-ed place, we really have to focus on a different type of recruiting strategy, because as a women's college, only 2% or less of women in the country will consider attending your institution. So you have to be national. The moment you go co-ed, you become very regional. And so we really need to be strong at home. And so that's a passion of mine, to make sure that our entire local community thinks about Wilson College as not only a great option for an education, but an affordable option for education.
One of the you talked about some of your initiatives, the way the marketing to being authentic, and still thinking about the college. Your tagline is "Find Your Bold." And so I think one of the things I peppered with you before, outside of Wilson, or maybe it's with Wilson, what is the bravest thing you've done personally?
Well,
I think actually do two things. Actually, it's like Chuck Woolery, 2 and 2. Anyone? What's the bravest thing you've done, and then what do you think is the bravest thing the college is about to embark on or going to do?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, for me, from a personal standpoint, I think being from the rural mountains of Eastern Kentucky, coming up in a very conservative background with a faith tradition that doesn't really accept LGBTQ folks, coming out was a huge, bold moment for me personally. For the college and its future, I think it's about thinking about higher education differently. What are we going to do to survive the upcoming demographic cliff? We as institutions have often said we need to be in competition, and I think we have got to be more creative about how we work together with one another, because we will not be able to all survive 2026 and beyond if we don't figure out how to be more efficient and effective.
So I want to kind of go upon, so I want to touch upon that. You talked about the demographic cliff. We have to address it. In your strategic plan that you mentioned, and that is waiting for approval, is the new programs.
Yeah.
Right. And I believe there was one certificate program, one graduate program, there's one endorsement, and 6 new programs, if I'm correct. And so in thinking about that, which of the programs, or is it all the programs, were they out of addressing that? Or was it more so you also need as being a regional powerhouse? Because so bringing in something else you said just a few minutes ago, talk about once we went co-ed, we really think about our region. It was this more regional need. I'm just really trying to tie in the intersection of 2 things you just said and back to those programs that you're introducing.
Yeah, great question. And so the good news is the plan was
Or you could
approved.
say it's a bad question.
No, it's a good question.
That is an option.
The plan was actually just recently approved by the Board of Trustees, so that's really wonderful news for us. But I think it was a combination of these items. When the pandemic hit, and we very quickly went into a strategic planning effort to think about how do we pivot. We looked at lots of data from that our admissions folks had about what students were interested in that we weren't offering, to other partners providing us data about our region, hearing from the local community. And so things like, for example, supply chain management emerged because the I-81 corridor, if you were to drive up and down I-81 around Chambersburg, you would see warehouse after warehouse after warehouse. We are contributing greatly to the movement of goods. And so how can we contribute to those businesses and preparing leaders for those businesses? Supply chain management is one of those. Others were areas where we have strength that we don't have a degree program that might be of interest to students. I think about the fact that we have some online programs, but we haven't converted all of our online or all of our in-person programs to online. How can we convert some of those programs, particularly around degree completion for adult students that might not want to be physically based in Chambersburg, but want to get a degree from Wilson and complete their degree. So we used a lot of data points to help inform, and I have to tell you, I'm very proud. This was largely faculty driven. They even said farewell to a few majors, and they did that based on data, and I'm really proud of the work that they did.
And so you said it was approved. So do you mind sharing when some of your programs will be launched?
We have launched them. So we actually have students enrolling in some of the programs this fall, which is pretty exciting. The faculty approved a vast majority of those last semester. And so we're really excited to get them going. And who knows, we may have a few more in the wings for the future.
Okay. So from an enrollment and recruitment perspective, what initiative are you most proud of and why?
Well, I thought a lot about this. I've only been here 18 months, so I've not been able to put a significant impact necessarily on our initiatives here at Wilson. But in my previous life, I think about 2 or 3 things. One is I love to talk about the art and science of enrollment management. So you've heard me talk about data a lot. I'm a data nut. I love reading the data. All of my conversations with my team are often about data. But there is an art.
So at night, do you just read the census, right? So Corey's maybe reading like travel or Pottery Barn, and you're just reading the census?
Yeah. I'm all kinds of crazy things that I would that would put everybody else to sleep. I'm reading and consuming. But I think I'm also really proud of some of the art pieces. And so fit is such an important part of this process. And just this morning I was having a conversation with my VP for enrollment management about how does every experience that a student has when they are coming to us, from an open house to an admitted student day to orientations, which are happening this week, how do they look and feel like the same institution and build pride in the same way? So some of the things that we've done in my previous life, we really focused on that admit packet so that it was pride building, that there's an opportunity to engage students on social media. We've focused on melt prevention strategies. So for example, my last institution had a lot of traditions and I helped add to some traditions. I love fun socks. So every student got a message introducing them to the traditions of the college in mid-July with some socks from me, and that also the mascot was wearing in the photo. And so just those kind of things that help a student feel at home, particularly for first generation college students, of which I am one, to just help them get to campus and build that sense of belonging, are things that I've taken a lot of pride in.
I want to actually go a little bit further into the two things you mentioned, because this is something that a lot of schools are trying to reassess, especially since the pandemic, and all populations are engaging differently, both the traditional population and what people would say the non-traditional or the adult population or multi-degree seeking population. Tell me about that at mid-packet. I'm actually really curious about when you thought, you said, hey, I'm a data wonk. I want to make sure it ties through. It really is more than just swag. Like you said, you have to be authentic. People, all students of any category understand what, swag is. So how'd you make that packet measurable or valuable? What were some of those assessments that you used?
Yeah, so we had a list of steps that we were hoping the students would take. And so you can measure, after the mailing goes, how quickly are they responding to those steps? Are they posting on social media? Are they signing up for a summer orientation? Are they filling out some of the necessary paperwork that they need to do? Are they sending in the deposit? Those are all some of the things that we measured. Some things aren't as measurable. A data point that I love is to know about campus store sales during admission visits. If someone's buying the sweatshirt and putting the bumper sticker on the back of the car, they're probably coming and they're probably pretty committed to it. So I love looking for some of those data points. They're soft in some ways, right? But it's giving me an indication of what the future might look like. But I also look at other hard data. So for example, how many of our students is this the first choice for? Because if we have a significant number that aren't a first choice, we know we've got an upcoming retention problem, and we need to, again, make them feel really proud about their decision to come to Wilson.
And now going to the second, you talked about melt management and bringing in new traditions. And that, I think, is something a number of schools are looking at and probably reevaluating as well because of the pandemic. And some students lost experiences, whether it was high school experiences or other experiences in their life. Can you share how, as you think about melt management now, some of the ways the pandemic have influenced your strategies or what you feel comfortable with? I understand that every school has their own secret sauce.
Sure.
I don't want you to share with me your Thousand Island dressing like at McDonald's, but if you can give us some, clues or tidbits, we would love it.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of the tried and true measures that we've used in the past continue to work. Some of the things that are causing students to melt away aren't going to be impacted by some of our efforts. So, example, if a student is really struggling financially, we can give them as much aid as we can give them, but they're eventually going to get to a point where they've got to make a choice if this is the right time for them to engage at our institution. So I'm not sure how much I think the pandemic is changing that strategy, except that I really want us to continue to be in front of them all the time, whether it be digitally or in other ways. We are a place that really focuses on the community atmosphere. So I tell my team, use me if you need me to make phone calls or write notes. I'm happy to do that. Our alums write notes to our students. So we really lean into that personal nature. But I would caution us to think that there's something special about the pandemic that would change those strategies too much. Of course, the pandemic has changed everything, but I think a lot of what we've done in the past will continue to work, particularly as we come out of the worst of the pandemic.
As president, besides the core data points, and maybe you've already given it away with your love of college bookstore sales,
Yeah.
aside from like the core data points of apps and deposits, is there a metric that you, and especially knowing that you've been in the role before, is there a metric you find valuable that at times is overlooked by enrollment teams? If so, what is that data point, and why do you think it's overlooked?
Yeah, so we've talked about a few of the ones
Yeah.
I like to look at, but some others that I know everybody likes to look at visit numbers. I love looking at visit numbers, and I like breaking it down. Is it their first visit, their second visit? Did they come for an individual visit? Did they come with a group visit? I love consuming visit data. My dissertation actually looked at campus tours and that sort of thing, so I get really excited about that work. Um,
Were
but
you a tour guide as an
oh yeah,
undergrad?
I was the chair of the tour guides. I really love giving a campus tour, even to this day. Um,
Wait. So, okay, hold on. Before you tell us the point. So, in other words, a parent or a prospective student can be signing up for a tour and they don't realize they're getting President Fugate as their tour director or as their
well,
tour guide.
not yet, although I think that's a really good idea, and I think I might steal that from you. But I do time myself. So if I were to look out this window that's right here, I'm actually looking at the admissions building. But I do time myself as I see the tour leaving to run down the steps and go greet families when the schedule allows. That fuels me.
Yeah.
Getting to interact with prospective students brings a lot of joy to my life. So as often as I can do that. But I give a lot of tours to donors and potential trustees and that sort of thing. So,
But that'd be awesome, kind of like the Secret Shopper, whatever that TV show was,
yeah.
where they're like expecting a student. You're like, you're actually getting the present.
Oh, I like this. I think my VP of enrollment I think is on, and so Bill, we're going to be doing this. I like that idea a lot. But here's a number that I really like to look at is where are we seeing a lot of applications in a major, and then we aren't seeing the yield in that major, and then what data points can we figure out about why it's not performing the way it should be? And that might mean that we've got things about our communication strategy about that major we need to improve upon, but it might mean that there's something with the curriculum that we need to examine. So diving deep, and we've had a major or two. I won't. They shall remain nameless. But where we've seen some of that, and so we're diving deep into that to say what can we change to influence this. And I'm really proud thus far. Our marketing team and enrollment have joined with the faculty and had some really tough conversations, and we're seeing some turnaround in those areas, and that's exciting.
If there was just an overall goal that you think can be the most, that is like two goals. If you said, you know what, this is going to be our most challenging goal as an institution, but I'm so glad we're striving for it. What would you say that is? It could be big or small, actually, because sometimes even the smallest of goals are challenging. What would you say that is and why?
So Wilson in its history has long been an institution that operates as thinly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have attempted to close 3 times in our 150-year history. And every time we rally and something, great happens and we're able to stay open. I would love for us to one day think about not survivability, but thrivability.
Yeah.
And really, that means looking at ourselves really intently, making some difficult choices about who we want to be and how we can serve students in this region. And that might mean changing a little bit about who we are. Our faculty are I think, leaning into that. And that means that there is a great possibility for the thrivability of Wilson into the future.
You going back to something earlier you mentioned, the 24 points of your DEI plan and the milestones associated from the timeline. When you think about that, was it equal participation? As you say, this was a community effort, where you step away. And, so what I mean, faculty and staff, and the staff being both student services, enrollment management, or did one group outplay another or outnumber another?
So the numbers
And
were.
did the students participate?
Oh yeah. So we had faculty, staff, students, and alums, and fairly even numbers of all of those groups.
Mm-hmm.
They were encouraged to meet with constituencies, but now that I've received the report, I'm about to go out to do town hall meetings with our constituencies to say what's missing. Did we not capture something that we need to have captured? Do you disagree with some of the things that have been put out there? I do a lot of, as you mentioned in my introduction, a lot of town hall meetings and a lot of engagements of constituencies. We did that all through the development of our strategic plan, and we'll do that with this commission's report as well.
Before I will ask one more question, I do have quite a few. Is there an idea that relates to recruitment and enrollment that came from a student, whether a current student or a student from a previous institution, that you thought, wow, this is a phenomenal idea or insight? And if so, can you share with our audience today what that was in that experience?
Well, I mean, I guess it seems so dated now.
Okay.
But the idea of a student takeover for social media back in the day, I remember students suggesting that idea to me, and this has been many years ago, as you might imagine, and me saying, I think that's really great, but are we brave enough to do it? And I went and shared it with the marketing team, and everybody thought I was absolutely crazy. And we did it, and it was a tremendous success, as you all know. So I guess the lesson learned from that is lean into some of those crazy ideas from students. We old folks, we
Bite your tongue. Bite your tongue.
We complain when the students don't, want to email with us. And I am sure there was at some point in time people complaining that email even existed, right? So if they want to text with us, we need to text with them. I'm definitely thinking we have to lean into where our students are and how they operate.
President Fugate, I know we do only have a few minutes left. Is there anything, just like closing remarks, you want to share with our community that maybe we didn't ask, or just any insight or from the decades of experience that you have that you could say, you know what, hey audience, think about this, or always think about this as you go out there to identify, convert, and find the right students?
Well, the one thing I will say, having been in both the enrollment world and the marketing world, is help your president understand the importance of the message. So I have been involved too many times where the president has their own message, and we of course want to hear the president's message, but the institution has a narrative, and you need to be helping the president say your language, to use the themes that you're trying to communicate. And I'm sure my marketing enrollment people are, saying, yeah, Wes, why don't you do that for us? But I think that's really important. And sometimes presidents don't want to hear it. They want it to share their story. But as we all know, using those same themes over and over again is really important. And, I'll give you a small example here. Immediately, I started using the word bold in various communications. I don't want to overdo it, but I want to recognize that is a part of who we are as an institution. We are encouraging our students to find their bold. And it's important that I, from the top, am using that language, and setting the example for faculty, staff, and students. The other takeaway that I would give everyone is that every single person on campus is an enrollment official. And how do you engage every constituency to believe that every single interaction with a student is an enrollment opportunity, positive or negative? And student that can be from a recruitment standpoint, or it can be from a retention standpoint. But the amount of influence that even your custodians and grounds people have on students, it's really, really powerful. They really do make a difference. And so how do you create that culture on your campus so that everyone believes that they're a part of the enrollment picture?
That last point is a really phenomenal one. And thinking like it takes the entire campus community. I only have a few minutes left. Just trying to see if there are any comments or questions that people want to ask while we're waiting on the line. President Fugate, I cannot thank you enough. I know this is a busy time for you, and I know that you as well took time out of your day from an existing commitment to spend with our community. So on behalf of all the Capture employees and all of today's attendees, I just want to thank you for making time for us. It means a lot. I cannot thank you enough.
Well, it's been my honor. I really love marketing and recruitment, perhaps maybe a little bit more than my team would want me to, because maybe sometimes I get into the weeds. But the work that you all do is so critical to changing the lives of students and ensuring their success. And frankly, as we all know, ensuring the success of our institution. So I thank you for the work that you're doing, and I wish you the very best as you continue to convert and yield and get all of those students onto your campus this fall.
Thank you. And I'm really bummed you won't sing me a few notes.
I am a little
time. We've still got a few minutes.
We knew Len was going to ask, and it was just a lot of, come on, Dr.
Look at me trying to avoid, right?
It was masterfully played, truly.
Oh, thank you.
And Dr. Fugate, thank you so much for the work that that you're doing at Wilson. I am pumped for your team that they get to have you at the helm. The initiatives that you described during this session today are powerful and meaningful, and will have a lasting impact within the world. Hey, Brandon, that was backstage, everyone. So thank you so much for all the work that your institution is doing.
Absolutely.
President Fugate, my team is asking me questions to poke and see if you have a few minutes to dig in a little bit, if you don't mind.
I would love to.
The first one, you hit a hot topic for us when you mentioned at the beginning about your single parent and how that is a great market for you. And I think that's one, when we look at diversity and equity and inclusion, is one that maybe some schools are not thinking about, but it is a very powerful market that is out there. And we were curious to know, what do you think have been your big contributing factors to bringing that population in and making them feel welcome on your campus?
So we have a very intentional program. Those single parents come and live in a designated residence hall. That housing is provided free to them. We actually pay for the food for their child. They pay for their own food, and they're responsible for their tuition, although we have generous financial aid. We have a director of our program that works with them. We provide them childcare. We provide them transportation to the childcare. If you're going to do this work, it can't be lip service. You've got to really serve the students and their families. But it's so powerful that we actually have the students walk across the stage, and their children come along with them at commencement in their little caps and gowns, which I love. But here's a really cool story. A student that went through that program had a child. That child then came to Wilson, and that now Wilson alum works in our admission office.
Cool.
So it's a really cool, powerful, and think about the lives that we are transforming. But I would say, if you're going to focus on that population, you really have to dig deep and serve the students. You can't just say, "Oh, we're calling that we're a place open to single parents."
Absolutely. The other question that was brought up is, when you put in these long-term strategic plans, usually the admissions and recruitment offices are the first ones who have to start implementation before the plans are actually, in place on your campus. So with this recruitment cycle coming up, how has your admissions team and your enrollment management vice president, how have they started implementing these plans into their recruitment cycle for this year?
Well, it's kind of interesting. So we were, I would say, building the bridge as we were crossing it. So the first year of our strategic plan was the one in which we were building the plan, and we were developing these new programs. And our vice president for enrollment management was involved in, I think, almost every task force, and he was brand new. So he was really getting to learn the institution well through serving in all of these committees and task forces. But he was there to hear what was coming, so that we could be prepared. We launched programs mid-cycle. It probably wasn't the best rollout in the world. Faculty would approve something in September, and by November, we were announcing to the world that we were adding programs. But we wanted to hit the ground running and get that message out there. But we have a really great VP of enrollment and a great VP of marketing and communications who are listening to the constituencies. They're very deeply involved in the planning work. And as they start to see things coming to fruition, they're just out there making it happen. I also think they're doing a great job of talking to their teams about that work. And I'm really intentional about having, as you've heard, lots of town hall meetings so that all of the campus constituencies can hear what's happening, so they're not surprised and they're ready to go.
Awesome. I also really liked what you said about everyone on campus being a part of the enrollment process. And I think it goes beyond just the enrollment process, but the retention process as well. I mean, so many of your staff members, the facilities, groundskeepers, the people who are working in the food service, they have so much interaction with the students, and can, if they know that they are empowered to help that student stay at your school, they can make such a big difference. And I've seen it over and over again play out where, you have the person scanning the cards in the lunchroom able to take that student down and help them reset their schedule and figure out what's more accommodating. And I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing to make that feel like it's a whole campus process.
Well, I think it's important to remember that every person is a part of the brand.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm a little over brand guy, right? Like, it's always a blue bow tie. I've always got a lapel pin on. I've got the blue socks on. Even if I'm working out, I'm in Wilson attire. It doesn't matter where I'm going. But how do we get everyone on campus to do that? When a prospective student comes and everyone's in the garb, you can feel that enthusiasm and that excitement. So, whether it's Wilson Wednesdays or Phoenix Fridays, where we promote getting people to share their Wilson pride, that's really important. And you've got to think about that at all levels, every single person on the campus, so that they're a part of living their bold, as we like to say.
Fantastic.
I love it. Well, Dr. Fugate, Len, thank you so much for a wonderful kickoff to day 2. We'll let you both move on to the next thing in life. And Lauren and I have some housekeeping items before we head into our next session.
So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, President Fugate. Have a wonderful day.
What a way to start.
I know.
Oh my gosh, Lauren. I hope all of you enjoyed listening to Dr. Fugate talk about the DEI initiatives on his campus and what they have been thinking about and how they're working to make lives in the community more full, right?
I especially like the emphasis he put on the community being so important to the college and making sure that the community is on board. Because let's face it, these students, they're not going to live on campus all the time. They're going to go out and venture out into the community, and they need to feel like they fit there just as much as they do on campus. So. Absolutely.
So we have a ton of great sessions today. We also have some giveaways.
Woohoo!
I was watching on social media last night, all the posts coming around with that hashtag Innovate 2021. Should we do the first, Lauren?
Yeah, let's do it. You know what? I'm excited about this one. It's almost Prime Day. I've got my shopping cart full for Amazon Prime Day, and we're gonna make somebody very happy today because they're gonna get $100 to use on Amazon today. So I don't know, that's like half of a Roomba or something that they can buy on Prime Day. And this Amazon gift card is going to go to
virtual drum roll.
It's going to go to Krista Murray from Heston College. Congratulations, Krista. Looking forward to seeing what you buy. If you could hashtag Innovate 2021 in that picture, that'd be great.
Congrats, Krista.
Just a reminder, we also have our donations for our 2 very, very important groups that Capture is choosing to support throughout our conference, which are the Boys and Girls Club of America and the National Urban League as well. So don't forget to make your donations. You can go to capture.buzz/donate to make those donations. And Capture will be matching the donation of up to $5,000. So very happy that we're supporting these 2 great organizations doing wonderful work all across America.
Absolutely. Amazing organizations. Last night, as promised, after the sessions were over, I logged in, capture.buzz/donate, and popped in my donation for both of them. So here's to the matching, right? I'm pretty excited. I hope you all join us in participating. So we have another session coming up.
We do. Yeah.
We have an action-packed day. We have branding from an institutional perspective and how it plays into student recruitment. We have all things data. And then we have our final keynote of the day. I can't believe we're already here on day 2. It's gone so fast.
Right. And I think these sessions today are very pertinent. I'm excited because I think they blend the lines and they really show, that joint effort that we heard from Jacksonville yesterday about how marketing and admissions have to work hand in hand to really bring your brand forward and to help with your recruitment. So very excited to continue seeing how that plays out in live action in our next couple of sessions coming up.
Absolutely. So our next session, I'm pretty excited to introduce. I have known this vice president for quite some time. So really what we're going to take a look at is, what does it take for a university marketing team to launch a new brand? Not just new logos, not just new colors, but let's go ahead and do the whole shebang. Beth Kasrauskas will be joining us. She is the Vice President of University Relations and Enrollment Management at University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy in St. Louis. And she's going to share with us about how her university translated its new institutional brand framework into communication that's relevant to prospective students. The result has been a consistent brand experience across its admissions funnel, with the ability to alter and update messaging quickly based on what's resonating. If Beth is here, why don't we go ahead and bring her in and do a little chit chat? Beth?
Hi, Beth.
Hi. Thanks so much for your kind words in the introduction.
Oh my
It's nice to be here.
We're so happy that you're here. I'm digging the home office.
Yes.
That's excellent. What has been your favorite working situation in the pandemic?
Oh, we acquired 2 pandemic kittens, and they love nothing more than to hang out on the desk with me here all day and sleep. They are secured for the moment, so you're not going to get any flybys of a cattail here. But that's probably been my favorite, just to watch them grow while working from home for a year.
That's
It's
fantastic.
been so exciting. It's been a really nice shift, but it's also been fun to see people take their work on the road with them. I've had several of our partners who have checked in, and they rented an apartment on the beach for a month, went to the mountains for a couple of weeks. So it's been a year of really exploring what makes you happy and showing that we can do our jobs from wherever. It's been very cool.
Absolutely. Now, I didn't go rent an apartment in the mountains or on a beach. I just was really excited to wear PJ pants during the day and be business on top, cash on the bottom.
You have on pajama pants right now, Heather?
I am just wearing shorts. I'll be really honest. And no shoes. No shoes at all. No shoes. So you got your kittens when they were teeny tiny little ones.
Yes.
Are they huge now?
They seem huge now. Yes. 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 They're litter mates. We have a calico and a tortoiseshell. They're cute.
Okay. Well, thank you for rescuing pandemic babies.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Beth, we're going to get out of the way.
Okay.
And hand it over to you and let you tell us all about all the awesome work that you and your marketing team have been doing over the last year, implementing your new brand.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me share my screen here with you all. Okay. Success on the first try. It's gonna be good. Okay, thank you all so much for having me here today. I really enjoy, getting together with folks at Capture annually and hearing all of the wonderful things and people that they bring to these conferences. So I'm honored to be a part of the lineup this year. And as Heather mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about this rebrand that we've gone through over the last 3 years. Yes, it has been a 3-year project, but ultimately focus really in on how we put this new brand to work for student recruitment and how we prioritized the recruitment audience throughout this process. Like all of you, we've been navigating this crazy pandemic year and working through the shift to remote learning and virtual working and virtual recruitment. What has been unique about our experience is that the pandemic came to our campus at the final stages of a rebranding project. This big project we had going on, literally in the final stages. When we all shifted to remote work and learning in March, we had a big decision to make. Should we continue with this launch as planned when we're potentially going to be still remote and our students potentially not on campus? Ultimately, we decided we had come way too far to hit pause. And of course, at the time, we didn't know how long the pandemic would last. So we pushed forward and publicly launched our new brand in September of 2020 with a virtual launch event. There are lots of reasons why an institution chooses to rebrand. It's a complex decision. There were certainly many factors that we considered in this decision with our board of trustees, but ultimately we chose to rebrand because the academic footprint of our institution was no longer accurately represented by the St. Louis College of Pharmacy identity. And it was presenting a barrier for us, particularly in recruiting students for new academic programs that we had launched. So I'm not going to share with you today the how of the rebrand, but I'm going to really start with the rebrand and walk through kind of how we took this new brand and then brought it through the recruitment process and really focused on prospective students. So before I jump in, I want to give us like a level set, grounding in some language, because branding can be a complicated topic. And when you hear the word brand, not everyone hears the same thing. Many people hear brand and they immediately think about the logo, but it's much, much bigger than that. When I'm talking about branding today, I'm talking about the largest definition. Our brand is everything people think and feel about us when they hear and see us. It is the totality of their perception and their experiences with us as an institution. Here's another way that we can think about our brand. On one side, we have our brand identity. This is something we can control. It's our logo, it's our tagline, it's colors, it's messages, it's advertising. It's all the things that we produce and push out. On the other side, we have our brand image. This is something we don't necessarily control. It's what people experience when they interact with our brand. It's how they feel. It's what they say about us when we're not in the room. Our brand, with a capital B, really exists somewhere in the middle. And there's a push and pull that happens through this process. Sometimes we're working trying to get perceptions of our brand to move closer to where we want it to be and where we are. Sometimes we're adjusting our brand identity to better reflect where we sit in the marketplace. When we're really managing our brand well, there's a real close connection between the people making branding decisions and the market. We're paying attention, and most importantly, we're listening to our audiences. Unfortunately, what happens way too often, though, is that the people making decisions about the brand decide what the image is and then push it down through the rest of the organization and into our audiences. And if that brand strategy actually makes it to the market, and often it doesn't, we don't listen for the feedback because we work in silos. If that scenario, or in that scenario, our brand under the most broad definition is just sort of floating somewhere. And if we don't understand it, we certainly don't understand a chance of influencing it. So part of the reason we end up in that situation, because branding is different than marketing. Brand programs are long-term, they're happening at the institutional level. And in branding, we're having conversations about who we are and how we want to be perceived and experienced in the marketplace. Marketing programs are much more short-term, they're very targeted, they end at the sale. Influencing purchasing decisions is the primary function of marketing, at least as we've established in our shop. So let me throw one more layer into this and bring in sales or recruitment. I think I'm among friends here, so I can use, the dirty business word called sales. We all know recruitment at the end of the day is a sales process. So in colleges and universities, these critical functions unfortunately get tucked away in silos and there's no integration. But aligning branding, marketing, and sales is very powerful. When we get these functions moving in the same direction, we leave much less opportunity on the table. With our rebrand, we tried to address that and really infuse our new brand into all of our marketing and communications and recruitment activities from the top to the bottom of the organization. So this is our journey, shall we say, from initiation of this project all the way through brand launch. So we began in April of 2018 at the direction of our board to really focus on rebranding the organization and making sure that we have a strong brand presence in the marketplace. We did all of the things you normally do in a rebrand process. We did lots of research. We commissioned new research, primary research. We had an agency review our existing research. We did partner with an agency called Fleischman Hillard throughout this process to help us through it. And after establishing a brand position and a brand blueprint, we ultimately decided we really needed to take a look at our name identity. We did not start this process thinking for sure we would rename. But certainly the research was telling us that we had to at least entertain that concept. So at the board's direction, we did some research, more testing, more name research, more testing. And then in October of 19, the board voted to change the name. At that same time, we began our strategic plan development process as our prior one was coming to a close. Now, some would argue you should do your strategic plan first and then, build your brand. We did that backwards. But we made sure, both with my AVP for communications and CMO and I involved in the strategic plan process, made sure that there was alignment along the way. In the beginning of 2020, we designed our new visual identity, and ultimately in September of 20, we launched our identity publicly, and you can see COVID happened in there as well. It was generally a 4-phase brand launch. We started with an internal rollout, our internal stakeholders, president, staff, board of trustees, key constituents that really needed to understand the brand and give us some critical feedback before we launched. Our soft launch included faculty, staff, preceptors, key alumni, and donors. And then our public launch was to the rest of our friends and family, if you will, our current students, prospective students, influencers, alumni and donors, community and media. And then our implementation phase 4 is what we're considering, all reinforcing this message in all of our marketing and communications, continuing on with our traditional and digital advertising, both for brand awareness and for recruitment. So considerations as we went through this process, there was a laundry list of things to consider, but today I'll talk a little bit about some that are most relevant to this audience, namely prioritizing our student recruitment and student audience. We needed to make sure that it was a quick and complete shift and that we needed to create a framework for future brand development that was usable. So as I mentioned, we prioritized the prospective student audience, and very early in our rebranding process, we made a very distinct decision to prioritize prospective students above all other audiences, including our current students, our faculty, our staff, our alumni. We can't make every audience equally happy all the time, so we had to make hard choices about which audience was most important. And as a small private institution, our tuition is our primary revenue stream. So the answer was pretty simple, at least for the CFO and the marketing team. But we don't always do that. And if you think in terms of the power interest matrix, I think you'll agree with me that sometimes we spend the most time and effort on audiences or individuals within those audiences that don't have a high power of influence or necessarily a high level of interest. They just make a lot of noise. So as we prepared for this brand launch, we had to prioritize where we put our human and financial resources because we all know those are limited right now. And we used this matrix as a guide. So in order to put our prospective students first, we really had some content work to do with the marketing team. Brand messaging is very lofty. It's vision focused. And well, really in essence, let's be real, it's not awesome for high schoolers. So before we launched the brand, we worked hard to translate that very high level messaging into something relevant and identity proof points to support them for the recruitment audience. It was a process that required us to go into the organization and in many cases, unfortunately, have some tough conversations. Because I think everybody here today knows that in higher ed, we all tend to want to say the same thing. So we spend a lot of time saying, okay, you want us to say we have world-class education. We need to prove it. We need stories, we need outcome statistics, we need everything. Because if we will not say it if you can't prove it. That brand strategy will last for, a few months in the marketplace for you before people realize that you're misrepresenting what the actual experience is like. We also decided very quickly, make a complete and quick shift. So how did we actually make this change? So you remember that timeline I showed you. Here in October of 2019 is where the actual tactical work for the marketing team started for us. So as soon as this change was approved, our Marcom team went to work, and for a year, they essentially ran 2 shops. They had to maintain the flow of their regular work, and they also had to run on a parallel track to touch every single piece of content and collateral across the institution, while also managing crisis communications in this little thing called COVID. So it was a heavy lift, very proud of them for that. When you think about what needs to be redesigned and redeveloped and relaunched, you probably think about the traditional business cards, stationery. You probably think about the website, probably even some, apparel, promotional merchandise, the publications we have, but it is everything. Every piece of paper, every third-party website interface, every sign-on on campus, every sign on campus. Launching this brand was an incredible lift. The team did an amazing job. because this is something that a lot of organizations get wrong. When you rebrand, it's critical that you make the change fully and don't look back, because creating consistent, polished experiences for our audiences is really key to success. In fact, this morning I just got texted a picture. The last of our gigantic building signs has finally been updated. So, I mean, we're nearing the end of having the complete shift made. So when a student gets a form from an advisor with an old logo on it, we all know it's happened. It probably is still happening today. Or an alumnus gets a letter in an envelope that's been in a closet for 10 years. Or when a staff member makes their own email signature because they just don't like the colors of the institution. The list goes on. We've all experienced these things. When that happens, the person on the other side doesn't walk away and think that person doesn't have it together. They walk away and think that university doesn't have it together. So those daily one-on-one experiences are our brand and critical, and we have to do everything we can to make them perfect. You know, we all would love to be in brand heaven all the time. And when you do have every single interaction perfect and consistent, you are in brand heaven. People trust you. People are loyal. People believe your authenticity and your credibility. But it is very easy when those experiences are not consistent to be in brand hell. And you can think about many brands, organizations, you know, both in higher ed and not, that are in brand hell because the experience was not consistent. You know, you can probably think of several just off the top of your head. So now we got through the planning, we got through the launch. Now what? This brand identity evolves, and for it to grow, we have to be listening to our audiences. Branding, like everything, is a process. Often we look at the process in a very linear way, starting with research, ending with trademarks and applications. But we have to loop back around and keep learning. This may include market research, perception studies, but those are huge, expensive projects that you'll only undertake once every few years. When we thought about how to get that information in a faster, more dynamic way, we actually really looked to recruitment marketing, because remember, prospective students were our most important audience. So for each of the brand pillars we translated them into recruitment messages, and we created sets of content that are connected. So we have a landing page, we have email messages that our friends here at Capture help us with, and we have digital ad sets, and under each pillar, the message is very consistent. What that has allowed us to do is look across those tactics and see in nearly real time what parts of our brand story are resonating and what parts are not. Recruitment is our most important business objective, and creating this feedback loop between frontline marketing tactics and the big institutional brand strategy really is helping us grow a brand that's rooted in our institutional goals. So I have just thrown quite a bit of content at you, and I would love nothing more than to entertain some questions or discussion about the types of things that you've seen at your organization about putting your brand to work for student recruitment. You can't tell me I covered everything so thoroughly you have no questions.
Sorry, Beth, I couldn't find my camera to turn it back on for you. We do have some questions for you. Here's Heather as well.
Hey.
Thank you for going through that. I've been taking down, I have my own questions, and then I have some questions from the group as well. But the first one is, you know, you showed us where the pandemic played in there and where it kind of hit you guys. How did it slow you down? Did it stall progress? Did it help you in any ways to give you more time?
Well, it did several things. It did not slow us down. It did cause us to pause and say, are we still planning this as we had intended to for a fall launch? We had always intended to have a launch when the students came back to campus. And no, the Board of Trustees and the President doesn't understand that the COVID pandemic has created an exorbitant amount of work for the marketing and communications team. So there was no slowdown. It was just keep doing it. I think if there was a silver lining in any of it, you know, we had some time to get good at virtual events before we had to launch a brand virtually. So we had a really nice virtual event, I believe. We had great in-house IT support that could help us pull that off. So at the end of the day, our brand launch was probably cheaper than if we had an on-campus, in-person, feed everyone kind of an event. So that saved us a little bit of money, but I do think we lost some impact there because there were a variety of reactions: love, hate, and some in the middle, but it was a pretty polarizing decision because we all know nobody likes change but a wet baby. So we had to navigate through some of that. So I believe there was a little bit of protection from some, direct adverse reactions, but then we had to go out and find those people to be able to have some conversations. So if I had to do it again, I probably would not prefer to do it in a virtual environment, but the silver lining would be that there was a little bit less cost involved.
So I know you mentioned that your team was running everything in tandem for those months leading up to it, and I saw that. If you could offer advice to others who are considering going through rebranding, was it helpful to have your team who knew and understood what you were going through doing the hands-on work there, or do you wish, looking back, you'd had more resources to put into outsourcing pieces of that? Where would you have put more money had you had it to go through this rebranding?
We did have partners along the way. So at the beginning of the research phase and the decision to change the name phase, we were engaged with Fleischman Hillard, and we did engage with the creative shop to help us with the very initial visual identity. But then our creative team took it and blew it out throughout all of our visual identity pieces. And we felt that was important because they were the ones who were going to have to use this every day. They were going to have to build the templates because they knew what people needed and how they used the various things that we did. So it was a good use of their time to go through that, because then they became really familiar with it and owned it. I would say, if I had to spend more money, it might have been to outsource maybe some other things that weren't related to this rebrand or recruitment. So that would have freed up a little bit more time for them. So perhaps some of the fundraising and advancement initiatives that the marketing team also supports, outsourcing that would have been relieved their pressure valve. Perhaps engaging with a crisis communications partner to help through COVID so that burden didn't fall to the team too, and they could focus on the brand launch. I think those would be the places. I also would say, don't underestimate how much you really should spend on digital and traditional advertising to do a very good job of launching and keeping a level of brand awareness in your key markets. I think that our administration was a little surprised at what that number might be, so we don't normally spend that. There were many on the board of trustees, though, who in corporate America understand and actually thought we weren't spending enough. So that was a great discussion to have with our board of trustees about, what should your advertising spend be in this situation, both for ongoing brand awareness, but then also just your ongoing recruitment advertising.
Sure. Beth, let me shift us over to the recruitment or sales side for a moment in this experience. As you think about all of the different artifacts and creative and all of the different messaging that you all developed around the pillars, is there a primary piece that you found to be, or that your admissions team found to be, the most useful in learning the brand, right? And then communicating that out to prospective students? Were there tools that you built for them?
Yes, I would say the most effective tools that the recruiters really resonated with them were the slide decks that our marketing team put together to help me and our CMO tell them about it and learn about it, and the discussion that ensued. Honestly, that was the most powerful because it gave them an opportunity. We had a doubt removal summit, if you will. Now's the time. Bring up your doubts. Let's overcome all of your objections. Let's really talk about this. What makes you nervous about this? And that discussion was by far, I think, the most helpful. And skipping that step would have been a huge mistake, I believe.
For sure. Lauren, let's go to Mackenzie's question. Yeah,
Mackenzie asked us from YouTube. She says, how did marketing get the whole campus on board with rebranding? We did a new launch 3 years ago, but we still have departments that use our old branding due to not wanting to be wasteful.
This feels like the nightmare situation.
It does. And honestly, we're still finding some of that. But a couple of things I would suggest. Number one, we bought everyone's replacement stationery as part of the rollout budget. So we've eliminated the price objection. I don't have it in my budget to buy new stationery. No, I bought it for you. And in order to get it, which was not optional, you had to give me your old. So trade. And honestly, the other thing that was really effective is, years of declining enrollment and feeling like we have to do something different, having those conversations at the president's cabinet level and getting that president's staff member to understand the why and why this was important, and educating, doing, presentations similar to what I just gave you about why branding is important, helped them see the why. Why is it important to not have an old logo on a piece of stationery, and how that creates an inconsistent experience? And then that president staff member became a deputy to wrangle all of those old pieces. So eliminate the cost objection. And then really it's an education process. Like, I consider myself a lobbyist. I have to go around campus and help people understand why this is important before I even ask them to do something in this situation.
When you all were going through this transition and getting feedback from all the different constituent groups, was there an element of your former brand that was really hard for folks to let go of?
Yes, and we actually had a good solution for that. Our alumni, our current students, and our faculty, I will say half of our faculty are alumni, really could not stand to let go of St. Louis College of Pharmacy as the name of the institution. So what we did is we named our College of Pharmacy St. Louis College of Pharmacy at the university umbrella, and now we have a College of Arts and Sciences and St. Louis College of Pharmacy at the university. And so that kind of took the sting a little bit off. I will say that in our launch, it was not immediately clear that it wasn't going away. And that's one thing I would do differently, is make that a little bit more clear in the public elements, the advertising and the videos and the brand story, make that a little bit more clear that it wasn't going away. It was just becoming some part of something bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. In your presentation, you talked about the development of messaging for recruitment. And that being a vehicle in which you could actually measure how the brand was resonating in the market. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that process, any of the insights that you were receiving early on, and if, I'll keep vamping while you cough, and if any of that reaction from prospective students and their families caused you to make any shifts?
This is a great question. I would say what we immediately began to look at is, as we changed our MVP emails that we work with you all on, we started to really closely monitor what was garnering the highest click-through rates, what content was resonating with them, what calls to action seemed to work the best. And so I would say our adjustments so far have been less about, are we changing a brand pillar, and more about how are we talking about that brand pillar, and what proof points and elements of the messaging really resonate with prospective students and across the audiences. So freshmen versus undergraduate transfers versus graduate students, monitoring all of those things. And it can be even the dynamic content that we work with you all on our website. You know, what gets the most attention? What do people tend to click on? It could even be, what order do we send the messages in? You know, where do we talk about, you know, the career opportunities available? Is it at the beginning? Is it at the end? You know, really trying to think through, you know, the order of things as well. So thus far, we haven't changed any brand pillars. We may be emphasizing particular pillars differently or more with a particular audience than with another, but we've stuck with our brand pillars so far.
That's fantastic. As you think about the process as a whole, I feel like from marketing professionals that I have known throughout my career, going through a brand change process and implementation, for many as a once in a lifetime or once in a career time opportunity, I think by choice. Did
I mention I was retiring? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. As you think back over the process, and this is a two-parter, but it'll be easy. What was the highlight for you? What was the moment where you're like, did the thing? Right? And then the converse, as you look back, and if there could be one thing that you changed and did differently, what would those two things be?
Well, the one thing that tells me we did it, we accomplished our objectives, is we have double the number of first-time, full-time applications for fall 21 than we did for fall of 20.
Congratulations.
And in our new majors. So, I mean, right there, I say to our board of trustees, this is why we did it, because we needed to increase applications. The other things, I think that, you know, the goosebump moments where you show your sizzle reel or the visual logo transformation to key audiences and to see their reactions, and especially people who are really, you know, felt strongly about St. Louis College of Pharmacy, to see them get it, those were my favorite moments. If I had to do something differently, there's a very clear winner in that category. I'll say our administrative strategy was to keep it a very closely guarded secret up until public launch, and that is a mistake. I was trying to recommend it being the worst, best kept secret ever by the time, we get to that point, because we knew this was going to be such an abrupt change for people.
Yes.
And on one hand, it does prevent the, attempted GoFundMe pages and change.org petitions to stop it. But on the other hand, it was very abrupt. And we didn't even talk to some of the closest people that really we should have at least made them feel important and special, however real or perceived they would have been as part of the process. That would have been critical, because then we would have empowered a bunch of brand ambassadors to be out there talking to those who are struggling with it and helping get that message out. So I would do that completely differently.
Yeah, thank you for that. Let's talk about your logo for a minute.
Okay.
I love it. I think it's super creative, but can you talk a little bit about the development of that visual identity? I feel like that's such a critical element of every institution's identity. Can you talk a little bit more about the logo itself, how it came to be, what it means to you?
Yes, it was very difficult, because how do you, represent our heritage in pharmacy, yes, and then also represent all of the new programs that we have, which are, while, still within the healthcare related field, often very different. Nursing is different than pharmacy, is different than OT and PT and things like that. So this is where I'm glad we worked with a creative partner to help us think through that process. And where we ended, and I guess I can probably put the logo back up so you all can see this as we're talking about that. Hold, please.
So I always find this process fascinating, because
the logo development.
Simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the first time you guys showed it to me, and are you going to show the one where it morphs from one to the other? That's
I was going to say, do I have enough time to go find that? Okay, there's a lot of things that you can see in here. And one of the most fascinating things is, as we were introducing this to people, everybody saw something different. And it really did depend on how you were engaging with the institution. So our high science, pre-med, pre-pharmacy folks, see a strand of DNA, of course. The people who really resonate with their St. Louis natives, or just being in St. Louis is important to them, they see the purple element as being the arch. People see the gray element as being a mortar and pestle. So kind of an ode and a nod to our past as a college of pharmacy. People really just, they find what is meaningful and what the institution means to them in it. And so we feel like we actually really did a good job of showing, we have science programs and, DNA and life sciences and St. Louis and pharmacy. And, there are people that really, the element that stands out most to them is university, because they weren't pre-pharmacy or pharmacist, and they really wanted to experience something bigger and broader. We heard that a lot with some of our prospective student research. Not everybody loves it. Nobody's going to love everything all the time. So we did get some critical comments, but I also think that has to do with the fact that they just didn't like the change in general.
Sure. Absolutely.
We talked a little bit yesterday about, sorry, Heather, I cut you off,
go.
Influencers and the parents and the counselors. And often those are alum for you, or people who have interacted with your brand for a long time under the St. Louis College of Pharmacy umbrella. Yes. How did you communicate with them separately from prospective students to let them know that they could be reassured that their students would get the same great education just under a different umbrella now?
Yeah.
Something that really resonated with our alumni is the fact that if you get a Doctor of Pharmacy degree from us, your diploma will still say St. Louis College of Pharmacy and University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy in St. Louis. Your transcript will still say that. So the legacy that we have built behind, that being in pharmacy education for more than 150 years is still attached to what they believe is important from a network perspective, because it's difficult to reach everybody quickly. So employers may not recognize us as a university, as a pharmacy school, but the diploma and the transcript, and giving them tools. Like we could suggest, when you're, writing your resume, here's how you could refer to St. Louis College of Pharmacy at University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy in St. Louis. Yes, it is a mouthful too, but a main reason that we left pharmacy in there is because of all of the feedback that we were getting, is that we were a pharmacy school for 150 years. We have to respect that. I will say, if you think about the name too, it does give us some flexibility to start perhaps cutting elements out over time. Hope nobody at the institution's listening. But that was very much, we chose, it was a revolutionary change, but it still has some room for evolution if the institution heads in that direction. May it not be, well, I am there and have to go through that again. To your point, Heather, sometimes that's a once in a lifetime thing, right?
We did have another question asked. Did the rebrand delay or expedite the introduction of new programs?
It didn't. In fact, I would say that we were late on the rebrand because we had launched 4 new undergraduate majors in fall of 2019, and we didn't launch this new brand, until September of 2020. And I think the slow uptake of those new programs was one of the compelling reasons to change our name, because people don't think of us as a place to get a degree in biomedical sciences as St. Louis College of Pharmacy. So, really that kind of demonstrated the necessity when we launched those new programs. And we're about to launch 8 new undergraduate majors for fall of 22. And I think we're going to see a lot faster uptake of those degrees in the market because we have a different name where people could see getting that degree at a university instead of St. Louis College of Pharmacy.
Absolutely. Beth, getting to the point of rolling the brand out is a massive undertaking. I would imagine that it doesn't stop at the rollout. So as you think about the next year, 5 years, what happens in this process as it continues to mature?
Good question. I mean, ad campaigns get stale, so you're constantly having to come up with new creative for your publications, but also your ad campaigns, and kind of continue to bring people along in the journey. Introducing new programs gives you a good foundation to talk about some of that, but the creatives can get creative, I will say. The other thing that's going to be critical is monitoring the health of the brand and the affinity and loyalty created as a result of it. So really establishing, and we have started establishing, but measuring those KPIs and demonstrating to the board and president's cabinet that it's working. Yes, at the end of the day, applications matter, enrollments matter, but there are other ways that you can measure your brand health. So I think for us, it will be a lot of that listening, a lot of that measuring, and then making conscious decisions to make adjustments to strategy as a result of that feedback. If you remember, I showed that it's a listening and a talking process. It's a you hear, how people are perceiving you in the marketplace, and that might not be what you want it to be. So you have to change your strategy to get them to come a little bit closer to where you want. You also have to have hard product and service conversations among your on the institution side. Is what we're selling what people are experiencing? And if there continues to be a gap there, that has to be addressed. So really, we've shifted into that conversation, and we have to have those tough conversations and look at the challenges we all know we're facing, but don't want to have to deal with, and start to deal with them in order for this to be successful.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, Beth, thank you for sharing all of the insights in your experience going through this process and translating it right into actionable tools in recruitment as well. If you could leave the folks attending today with any words of advice of how to take that brand and translate it into powerful recruitment messaging, what would you leave them with?
I would say that it's not something that you can produce the recruitment materials and then hand them to the recruitment staff and say, good luck. It is training, it is conversations, it is constantly helping them make the connections, because I think it's very easy as marketing people to go, isn't it obvious? How do you not just get it? I've been working in it for 3 years. They have not, is what you have to say. And so how do you help get them on the journey with you and get to your point of understanding about the brand? And it's not just an email or one slide deck that you give to them. It is ongoing conversations. And, when you're getting this feedback on your listening tour, go back and say, this is what we heard, this is what we changed. Tell people what you're doing. I think you can never spend too much time with people having that conversation, because they're still not going to completely understand it. So keep doing that, keep that conversation going, keep it a major focus of president's cabinet's discussions so that the rest of the institution is also bought into the importance of your brand.
It's fantastic. Congratulations to you and your team for pulling forward a pretty amazing effort to make this brand be living for UHSP. And thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing all of your great knowledge. We really appreciate it.
I always love joining you all at this conference that you put on, and thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great day, Beth.
All right.
Beth, thank you.
I can't even imagine.
I know. You know what, though? I kudos to UHSP for doing this and recognizing that they needed to rebrand to stay thriving in this market. I think it's a great message for all of our listeners to hear that when things aren't working, you got to change it. And they took drastic steps, and look at the payoff. I mean, I'm so excited to hear about their application pool for 2021. So much.
Yeah, I feel like the branding efforts helped really just put them into a different place in the market. Students who may not have looked at them before clearly, right, based on their numbers, are starting to look at them today. It's pretty awesome. I know there was a point in time in my career at one of my former institutions where we were discussing a potential brand change. And what blew my mind was I never even thought about the intricacies of the things you had to change, right?
I was thinking to myself as Beth was talking about them, like, what do you think was that last thing that they found that still had the old logo on it or something? You know, you're like,
I don't know, some name tag somebody had on the
line, and there's stickers somewhere in the admissions office that still say St. Louis College of Pharmacy. You never know.
Oh my gosh. It is wild. I am pumped for the back half of day 2. I think we have a giveaway to do. Shall we move forward with that?
Let's do it.
So just as a reminder, in order to be entered in, because we have one more drawing left today, so make sure that you are posting, reposting, capture posts, hashtag Innovate 2021, get your social media on so that you can be entered into our drawing the last of the day. We are about to give away an Apple Watch. And our last giveaway this afternoon will be for another all-access masterclass pass. So make sure that you get your social media on and get into the drawing. Our winner of the Apple Watch this afternoon is, drumroll please, excellent, Ashley Morenweiser from Colorado State University, Pueblo. Congratulations.
Awesome. Way to go, Ashley.
Woo-hoo! I'm jealous. I don't have the Apple Watch, and evidently friends and family can't win. So
to the family for Christmas and birthday gifts.
And just as another reminder, don't forget that throughout the rest of the day, Capture will be matching attendee donations up to $5,000 to the Boys and Girls Club of America and the National Urban League. I know we keep saying it, but I love these two organizations, and I'm so proud to support them. Please join us and pop in your donation today. You can do that by going to capture.buzz/donate and make that donation. Lauren?
Yeah.
What do we have going on?
Hey, we've got an awesome presentation coming up next. We've got using data clarity to inform your creativity. And this one is going to show us all about how data and creativity don't have to be oppositional forces. And the best writing uses both personal and true, and is also true to the broader facts. So you got to be creative, but you also have to rigorously test what you're doing. So our data scientist, John Foster, is going to be joining us with Colin Palmer. You'll remember Colin from yesterday. He's the director of undergraduate admission at the University of Toledo. And they're going to talk about how the right data can inform your creative efforts.
Awesome. I'm so excited. Every time I get a chance to listen to you talk about data, I can barely stand myself. Oh, there's some feedback going on. That was interesting.
That thing sounded a little crazy.
Either that or someone was trying to hack into your session.
I talked some trash about algorithms. They might have some AI. They might get in here. I don't know.
Colin, how are you today?
Good, Heather.
That is Colin's audio. It's crazy.
Colin the robot.
Right.
Is that you better now?
You're in slow-mo. How'd you do that?
It's a really cool effect. We'll give Colin a minute to reset his robo settings and see what's going on. John.
Yeah, I can get us started.
Well, tell us a little bit. I feel like everyone in the world, at least I do, always want to know what you and the other data scientists are cooking up in the lab.
Oh, gosh.
Anything cool from an insight perspective that you guys have uncovered lately?
Oh, insights?
Yeah.
We're looking at, how do we serve dynamic content more effectively would be one. As far as like timing it and choosing what content. We know that it has a good impact, but we're also, trying to maximize that and optimize that. It would be one among many things.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Colin, should we give it a test, see if the robot went away?
I'm not sure anything's changed.
That sounds better.
Okay. Good. All I did was open up the cam and mic settings. Didn't even touch anything.
All right.
It never makes sense to me either, Colin. Well, we'll leave you guys to your session. Thank you all so much. We'll be back shortly.
Great. Thanks. So welcome to our session, using data clarity to inform your creativity. I'm John Foster, data scientist at Capture. Colin, you want to say hi?
Sure. Good afternoon or morning, everyone. Colin Palmer, Director of Undergraduate Admission at the University of Toledo in Northwest Ohio.
So I'm going to start us off, share some ideas about how creativity and data can work together, then pass it off to Colin. He's going to give some real world examples about how his campus has used data to drive creative enrollment initiatives. So starting off with some good news, we still need humans. So good for us. For example, starting off with what happens when AI try to be creative. This is from a book by this woman, Janelle Shane. She's an AI researcher, and she took a bunch of pickup lines and fed them to her AIs and then let them create new ones. So the results are pretty interesting. One of the pickup lines I came up with is the title of her book here. You look like a thing and I love you, which is pretty good. Some of my other favorites are, I have exactly 4 stickers. I need you to be the 5th. Or, hey, my name's John Smith. Will you sit on my bread box while I cook? Or was there some kind of speed limit on that thing? And finally, you have a lovely face. Can I put it on an air freshener? I want to keep your smell close to me always. And as much as I would love to spend our whole time on this, probably move on. But the point is, we still need human creativity. Because there are some things that data and algorithms are good at, and other things that humans are good at. And for those of you who caught our excellent opening keynote speaker, you'll recognize that most of the things here on the right are you could categorize as being creative in some way. So one of the things that the data and algorithms are good at is finding complex patterns. So for example, in our predictive models of apply, aid, and enroll, they search through hundreds of variables and millions of combinations between those variables to tell which students are most likely to apply, which students are most likely to enroll, and how much are students likely to respond to aid. And never in a million years would a human be able to sort through all those combinations of variables and find those complex patterns and make a prediction with the same sort of accuracy that a machine can. However, humans are good at discerning meaning from the pattern. Like what does this mean? We're all tasked with coming up with why does our school exist? Why does Why should a student apply or enroll at our school? What does it mean for their life? Or we can put down some quantifiable measures of increased income or whatnot, but also what do we hope that they will come out of here becoming? What sort of a person should they be when they graduate from our school? They're also good at testing hypotheses, but still need a human to come up with the hypothesis, which is kind of inherently a creative task of making a hypothesis based on your observations of the world. I'm going to talk about how a school tested the hypothesis that email has an impact on inquiries in a little bit. So hold on for those results. Data and algorithms are good at measuring success, and we get lots of data and lots of metrics, but it's up to us to define success. Which of those metrics matters? So an example here would be with email. We used to measure with email really opens, clicks, unsubscribes, the total number of those, which is pretty common. But the more we thought about it and the deeper we explored it, we redefined success to say, okay, actually, we're not interested in just maximizing opens and clicks. We're interested in maximizing the number of people that we actually have an impact on through opening and clicking. And so now we measure openers and clickers, so individuals who open or click. And how you define that success will determine what actions you take to get there. Machines are very good at automating repetitive tasks. Things like sending millions of emails and thousands of digital ads, and loading dynamic content that is relevant to people as they explore your website. Those repetitive tasks, the machine is better. You don't want to be clicking send every time you need to send an email. But hopefully that frees people up to come up with new ideas. And people to capture and at your campuses, thinking of new, fresh, more impactful ways of talking about your school and of presenting that information. They're very good for prioritizing work. So much of the value that Capture gives is in some scores that we give that can help you prioritize your outreach efforts. So we have an engagement score, which measures how engaged is a student right now on your website. We have an affinity score, which is how engaged have they been overall time. And then we also have an apply score, which says how likely are they to apply, so you can prioritize your work, reach out, send your direct mail to those students where it's going to have the most impact, and phone calls, text messages. Same thing for enroll, prioritizing out of your admits who's most likely to enroll, or at this time of year, who's most likely to melt, as well as who's going to respond to aid. So all of those things can help you prioritize your work, hopefully make you work smarter, not harder. So that ultimately, ideally, you're going to spend more time doing what only humans can, which is forging human connections, right? Having relationships with prospective students, talking about what matters to them, about why what they want out of college and beyond. So hopefully we can free up some of your time to do more of that.
John, I have a mentor of mine who has a PhD in structural engineering, so very data-minded, a scientist, and he taught me that we want to make data-informed decisions, not data-driven decisions.
Yeah.
So I think that's just an anecdote I wanted to share, and something that I take into my everyday work is we want to review and know what's available, and the models are going to create that for us. Yeah. And we're going to use that to inform what we do next, but not necessarily drive each individual action that we take.
Okay. Yeah, that's nice. That's a good way to put it. So speaking of kind of a data-informed approach to email, did an analysis around what are the most effective subject lines and what are the most effective words and subject lines. So this would be, some examples of subject lines for email that that, the data say should be effective. Things like, come join us for our open house April 13th, or your application is nearly complete. So these, they're, for one, they're tied to a specific action, usually a specific date. We find those sort of emails are very effective. I would say these are useful, but a little bland. They're not the most exciting subject lines we've come up with, and sometimes data-driven decisions can be very utilitarian. But there's a place for that. There's also a place to be more creative. So here are some subject lines I've come across that would be more on the creative side. This top one came across is not from Capture, but it was an email that I saw, and I'm sure they got a good open rate on that. The second two are from Capture, were from a re-engagement campaign. So these were students who we'd sent an entire series of emails. They hadn't opened or clicked any, had shown no interest up to this point. So it was a point where we were willing to take a little bit more of a risk. So decided to be a little more playful and creative and come up with these subject lines, as well as the emails themselves were in a similar tone, kind of playful, or definitely playful. The results from these were really impressive. Got like a 17% open rate, and several additional students who apply, students that we've pretty much written off. So the point is, don't be afraid to be playful. Try something creative, and then come back and test it with data, measure it with data. Got a couple examples along the same lines from Collins School. A straightforward but effective email here of complete your application, and then one that's a little more creative, a little more personal would be, we'd love to show you campus. So a good place for both of those tones. One that's very to the point, and another that's a little bit more relationship building. So overall, I would say be creative and then test. And one way to test is measuring against other content. That's kind of the easiest and most common. How were our opens and clicks compared to the averages or other similar pieces of content? But even better, if possible, is to experiment. And I say that if it's good enough for life-saving medical treatments, it's good enough for a postcard. This is the way that we move forward in scientific knowledge of medicine. When there's a new medicine or new vaccine, we set aside a random group of people that don't get the treatment. So one random group gets the treatment, the other random group, usually gets a placebo in a medical context. If it's good enough for that, it's good enough for higher ed. There is like this concern that if you don't send everybody direct mail, then you're going to miss out on some people who you might have pushed toward application or further. But you're also missing out on the knowledge. You're not sure if that direct mail piece had an effect or how much of an effect it had. If you're able to run an experiment, then you know not only if it was effective, but just how effective. And sometimes with an experiment, the answer is it doesn't really matter. So, one example would be like an A/B test of different dynamic content. Sometimes we found that it does matter. Sometimes we found that the subtle differences between the two don't really matter. Serving it at the right time maybe is more important than actually what the piece of content is. And that's useful information. If it turns out that one's better than the other, or if it turns out that they're actually essentially the same, then you know how to proceed. I alluded before about something one of our schools did, which was a pretty gutsy move. They did a holdout group, so they put us to the test in an experiment of whether our email was going to take junior students and drive them toward inquiry. Sometimes we I don't know about we as Capture, but other people out there, right, say that we sent them email and they became applicants therefore the email drove them to apply or inquire. When the truth is, some of those students would have applied or inquired otherwise. And so in running this experiment, there were some of the students from this random holdout group who did inquire, but email drove 4 times as many inquiries. So we knew not only that it was effective, but just how effective it was. So this is something that I would like to see more of in higher ed. I think we could benefit from.
John, I think that there are often three groups that you can put prospective students into. There are those that are never going to apply or enroll no matter what you do. There are those that are always going to apply and enroll no matter what you do, bad. And then there's that middle group, and the middle group is really the group that we want to influence most. And I mean, models can help us determine who those who that best group is, those that are going to apply or enroll no matter what we do. That to me would be an interesting group to do some A/B testing with, whether that's holding out some of them for a certain call to action or not, or developing, a call campaign or an event invitation in 2 different ways, or how you talk about certain things. That would be perhaps a group that you might have better results, more accurate results with. If you go to that third group that you aren't going to probably influence no matter what, well, how are you really going to gauge your success if they probably weren't going to do what you wanted to do in the first place?
And the reason we don't often is one, it is kind of scary, and 2, it does take a fair amount of work. So there is limits to how often you can do it, but as much as possible, I think is what we should be doing. So on a kind of a new topic here, combining the trend with the individual. So this is a way that data and creativity can be friends. So in my opinion, much of the best art is both universal and specific. So I have a couple examples here of The Godfather being set in a very specific time and place, very specific characters, but addressing universal themes: family, loyalty, greed. Born to Run is very specific, talks, windy, Highway 9, New Jersey, but the universal theme of just the restlessness of youth. So these are things that we all can identify with. And the thing is, like, the specifics don't necessarily have to be my specifics. And it's true that representation matters. We should be telling lots of different stories about lots of different types of people. But I don't have to be a teenager working in a factory in 1970s New Jersey to identify with Born to Run. It matters that it's a specific story about a person in a time and a place. And we're able to identify with them. So I, like a lot of people you will meet, am a former journalist. With the death of newspapers, there are a lot of us out there. In journalism, this is something we try to do on a broader story. Find an individual who's been affected or who has a perspective on it. I would say the best nonfiction writer, the person who does this the best, in my opinion, is Michael Lewis. So if you look at his books and the movies that are based off them, they're always centered around an individual person. And used to explain broader concepts. So in Moneyball, centers around the manager, Billy Beane. It's played by Brad Pitt, and uses that to talk about data-heavy concepts of on-base percentage and market inefficiencies. In The Big Short, it's centered around, among other characters, Michael Burry, who's played by Christian Bale, and uses this as a way to discuss topics like short selling, credit default swaps, these big intimidating topics that are made much more real and much more approachable by centering them around an individual person. So what does this have to do with higher ed? I find that some of the best student communication shares the same characteristics. So again, from Toledo, you've got here that their accounting program has a 93% job placement rate, which is great, but more memorable probably is the story from Jessica, how the accounting program prepared her for professional success. The two side by side, the story along with the data, to me, like the data means that it's not just an isolated anecdote. It has some validity, whereas the story makes it real and concrete. Sometimes we try to sell students on the facts of our institution, so the student to faculty ratio, the percent of students who get internships. But I would say as much as you can to wrap that individual story, wrap that in an individual story of a student who feels at home because of small classes, or the student who had their dream internship last year. The decision to go to college is both rational and emotional. And as much as we can tie into both of those, I think that the more effective you're going to be. So now I've done plenty of talking. I'm going to turn it over to Colin. Let him talk about how he's put some insights into action.
Sure. So I'll provide a brief moment of context around our relationship with Capture, and we've used CBE and behavioral engagement data and platforms for quite a while now, since before my time here. But since becoming director at Toledo, we've brought on the Apply model and now the Enroll and Aid model. So I find I'm looking forward to using that next year. But I want to talk a little bit about predictive modeling, and just recognize first that paralysis by analysis is certainly something out there. John, probably comes as no surprise to you. That term comes from that same mentor, paralysis by analysis. So there's a lot of information available to us, and I'm partnering with Capture to bring on more and more, right? So more data points, more things for John and his team to do, to provide to the University of Toledo to help inform our strategy. But what I enjoy about it is it combines historical enrollment data and behavioral engagement data to really provide a more meaningful and accurate score for the students that we're trying to work with. So at Toledo, I know our prospect pool is growing exponentially each year. We're investing a little bit more in search and just name acquisition, whether that's through traditional means like ACT, College Board, and RCCUA, or something a little bit different with Score, Naviance, niche, whatever that might be. So we're building that top end of the funnel, and we're using that data to inform our strategy. So one example, last year we sent a prospect to inquiry mailer, is my kind of internal name for it. And what we really wanted to do was drive traffic to our website to build strength in the model. So we had our prospects, let's say there were 150,000 of them. We sent this piece and it had a QR code on it. I know that was, I felt kind of, that was, I think, before menus even started having QR codes. So I think that our marketing team was like, are QR codes even a thing anymore? And now we're all, I think, accustomed to them again. But what we wanted to do was put that into their hands, put it in front of them, and then drive traffic to our website so we could identify more visitors, so we could begin to collect more information about them and really begin to convert a lot of those prospects into inquiries. And why did we want to do that? Why was that a big part of the strategy? Well, I think a year ago, we were all very unsure and concerned about our ability to convert prospects to inquiries. We weren't going to be in high schools. We weren't going to have opportunities to attend college fairs. And so we had to think of creative ways to do that, but also reinforce our model. So as we move through the funnel, we were able to really allocate the limited resources that we had to put relevant and timely information in front of students that needed it. And that's what our goal was. We knew our pool was so large. We had our goal of our class that we wanted to enroll, but I knew that if I wanted to, have 15,000 applications, 10,000 applications, whatever, I couldn't continue to mail things to 150,000 students. And we really had to use the data to think creatively about how we were going to do that. And I mentioned, I mentioned the model, the Apply model, and using the different deciles. And the question is, well, do I reach out to those 40,000 students in the 10th decile because they have a 44% chance of applying to Toledo, or do I really try to increase those nines to apply and engage with the institution? And so you think about the varying resources that you have, and how you're going to allocate those in order to make the movement that you need to make. Another thing we did is we were fortunate at Toledo to really bring back on-campus visits sooner than a lot of our peers in Ohio, but perhaps nationally, I've been back on campus 5 days a week since June 22nd of last year. So my anniversary is coming up. But what we realized is that, like most of us in higher ed, the campus visit is one of the strongest predictors of a student's likelihood to apply and enroll. As a regional institution, we draw a lot of our students from within 100 miles of campus, but I think another challenge we face is students that live locally often think they know more about our institution than what they actually do. And so we're seeing lower campus visits from that group because a parent may have attended the university, an older sibling, a teacher, what have you. They might have attended a camp here. Well, they don't really know it in the way that we want them to know it. And so we're like, okay, well, how do we think creatively about how to get local students on campus? Therefore, putting that into the model and to really strengthen that and have a better idea of their likelihood to enroll. So that way, if we have financial aid late into the season, how do we leverage that? How do we direct our student telecounselors? And so we're like, well, I don't think a normal daily visit is going to get a local student on campus. They've had that opportunity at Toledo for decades. So we scheduled some behind the scenes tours. A lot of fans in Toledo a lot of people in Toledo are fans of Rocket football, Rocket basketball. So we're like, okay, well, we're going to schedule something in the evening. We're going to have food trucks. We're going to meet in front of the football stadium, and we're going to go to the roof of the press box. We're going to go into the basketball locker rooms. We're going to go to the roof or the 5th floor of the library. And we're going to do those types of things. Yeah, and walk people around. And we knew that in order to get them here, that's what we were going to have to do, was to make something different and unique. And we did that with pets. We did a dog tour, a lawn tour of the university, where we gave out little bandanas that said future admission ambassador on them to tie on dogs. We had dog treats. And that was just a great way to engage with the community and build awareness and build affinity with the institution. And so all of those things, driving the visit, driving the registrations, helped us in our final, yield efforts as we're looking into kind of wrap up the entering class for the fall.
Yeah, cool. And I think it's what we had to present. I mean, I think we're open for questions and discussion.
Hey guys, thanks so much. Oh my gosh. And Colin, thank you for being an incredible panelist yesterday and coming back and sharing all of these amazing insights of the work that you guys are doing. Can we talk for a minute about the dog tour?
Yes.
Absolutely. So the dog tour was not my idea. I will admit that. The person in my office, Andi, who manages our campus visits, is a passionate dog mom. And we have, throughout COVID, been a little more flexible with folks bringing their pets to work. And so Dobby, Andi's dog, has spent some time on campus. And we were like, well, wouldn't it be cool if we did something directly for pets? And we have an amazing neighborhood right across the street from our campus. We engaged the neighborhood. We did targeted social media in that neighborhood. We invited our faculty and staff friends. And how much did that really influence our yield or increase deposits? I don't know, but I'll tell you what, it sure as heck was fun. The dogs were cute. We had about 40, 45 of them on campus. And it was really cool to just walk around the campus for, an hour on a Wednesday evening.
Yeah, at a time when we all could use a little bit of fun, right?
Exactly.
That behind the scenes tour sounded pretty cool for me. I mean, that's not an experience even probably a lot of your active students would ever get to say they had. So that's really cool.
Absolutely.
Colin, you talk about reconnecting with the local community, and I think it's an important point because we're working with a lot of institutions that are using the phrase "think local," in part because of the pandemic. Students want to feel a connection, perhaps closer to their home than what we have traditionally seen amongst American high school to college age students. So can you share with us, based upon some of the data that you've noticed, local activities that performed better than you thought?
Len, you cut out for just a minute. Can you just repeat the question, please?
Can you think of some of those local activities that you've implemented that have performed better than you thought based on the data? And why do you think they performed so well?
Sure. So when I looked at National Student Clearinghouse data after Census Day of fall 2020, like probably most other institutions, we saw more students in our funnel that didn't enroll anywhere at all than what we'd seen in the past. Not a huge surprise, given the challenges associated with COVID. And we found that a lot of those students were from the greater Toledo area. And so we used that to really develop outreach strategy to partner with local CBOs focused on, higher education attainment, community-based organizations focused on that kind of work. We did that to communicate about, funding college opportunities. And so it was a really great way to just engage members of the community to just support college attainment in general. And I'm happy that at Toledo we have such a strong relationship with our local community college and really approached that work together, because we all recognize what's good for us is good for the community. But I also know at Toledo, what's good for Owens Community College is good for the University of Toledo. And so we partnered together and saw some movement there. And actually, our adult transfer, I'll say just non-traditional student populations for the fall are stronger than I would have anticipated. And I believe we're going to see some enrollment increases in a lot of those areas.
Colin, Kate over on YouTube has asked if you have any endeavors for adult learners to bring their kids to campus.
That's next. Yes. So we, a couple years ago, we started printing crayons and, Rocky and Roxy cutouts to have available at our events, but recognizing that those are often in the middle of the workday. So we have transitioned a lot of our events to the evening hours, especially for more non-traditional students, but really being able to engage them. One of the things that we're doing this year is partnering very closely with the Division of Student Affairs and playing a more active role in Family and SIBS Weekend at Toledo. So I think we'll be able to see some opportunities there to help us inform our strategy moving forward, but just connect with children, families, and that kind of thing throughout the process.
That's awesome. The concept of A/B testing and creating communications that matter, right, and that work can be a really complicated process. Colin, as you and your team have endeavored to explore, right, how best to communicate effectively with prospective students, what are the two things that you have learned the most from all of the experimentation that you may have done?
Sure. I think A/B testing is a little challenging to think about. The thing I find most challenging is finding the time to set aside the research and build your hypothesis and ask the question that you want to ask. That's the hardest part. But what there are two different things that I think about. I think about affinity building messages to build an emotional connection with the university. And then I do think about those transactional transactions that we want students to take, but how do we talk about those and encourage that behavior without saying, here's 5 bullet points when you've been admitted, log into your student account, submit your enrollment deposit, submit your housing, those types of things. And so we've done a little bit of that in that regard, and the jury is still out on the success because that really just started this year. What we've done a lot of A/B testing for, though, is event attendance. And so we've developed 2 different invitations, 2 different, direct mail pieces or emails. And we've done it just by showing different photos, put a photo on this one and a photo on this one and see how the attendance goes. So I don't have a direct, one was more successful because I'd have to show you and I don't have them handy. But those are some of the things that we've done, mostly in the next steps, the transactions, what we're trying to do is influence behavior, that we've talked that a little bit, and then event registration.
Absolutely. So we have one last question, I think, in time before we head into our final keynote of the conference. The comment from a user out on YouTube: UT has done a great job integrating and branding their messages in Northwest Ohio and Southern Michigan. Clearly someone who's informed.
Well,
what's the plan to move and find other pockets of future rockets?
Oh, wow. Well, we are looking at markets outside of Ohio. We had 0 regional recruiters 18 months ago, and we're up to 5 and possibly a 6th already. So we're definitely thinking about that. But also we found just divvying up other markets amongst our staff, whether they're in Toledo or our regional staff, and paying very specific attention and inviting them to events specifically for them is important. I mentioned this on the panel yesterday, but we held a virtual information session just for students from Texas or from Florida and Georgia, and had 17 students attend. And to have 17 students from those 2 states attend an event for the University of Toledo is big news. So I think that really works. So thinking about just thinking about the smaller communities that exist within our pools of hundreds of thousands of students, and building those connection points is what's been most important.
That's fantastic. Well, John, Colin, thank you both for an awesome session and some really great takeaways to think about as we continue beyond Innovate.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Len?
What's next?
I'm very excited.
I am very excited. So is it back to me to introduce our last keynote?
It is. Back to you.
Thank you so much, and welcome everyone once again. I'm Capture CEO Len Napolitano. I hope you've been enjoying the second day of our annual National Virtual Conference, Innovate 2021. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our closing keynote for the conference, Matt Blevins. Matt is the Global Brand Director for Jack Daniel's Tennessee Whiskey at Brown-Forman Corporation in Louisville, Kentucky. Longtime marketeer, he has held a range of brand management roles at regional and global levels. At Brown-Forman, he continues to lead the brand building and positioning operations, as well as communication efforts across several layers. Today, he will discuss the art and science of brand building, helping us understand the evidence-based ways to build your brand and reach your audience. Along the way, he will also share his own experience building one of the world's most iconic brands and how to apply these lessons to your brand building effort. Matt holds a bachelor's degree in economics from Centre College and a master's of applied economics from the University of Cincinnati. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Matt.
Thank you, Len. I appreciate it. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. I think I can share my screen now. See if this works. And can you see the presentation? Sorry, I can't see you now. I'm sorry. Just let me know that you can see it and I'll get going. Oh. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. I hope you can see that now. All right, nothing like a good technology challenge. Well, thank you all. Thanks for having me here at Innovate. My name is Matt Blevins. I am the Global Brand Director at Jack Daniel's, and it's an honor to be here. And I have to admit, I'm an outsider to the industry. So, it's been fun as I've gotten to dig into sort of college marketing and looking at a whole new world that I spend my time with, and I'm pretty familiar and involved in consumer product marketing. But this was new territory to sort of dive into, and it's been fun. I have spent my career as a marketer, building brands, and I love it. I'm passionate about it. I love the art and the science of brand building. It is truly one of the more fun careers that I think is out there, and it's underrated. So I'm really hopeful that that I can continue to do what I do, but also that we build a good community of marketers that have the same passion that I have. I'm going to talk today about sort of how we think about brand building and how we approach it, and really focus on evidence-based marketing, which is how we look at the world. But I'm going to start with a little bit of an anecdote. This is someone that you may not know, and if I had to retitle my presentation, it would be Level 5 Brand Leadership. You may not know this person, but there's a great book by Jim Collins called Good to Great that talks about leadership overall and the qualities that make great leaders. And this is a man named Darwin Smith, and he was appointed a CEO in the 1970s. Really didn't think he was ready for that job, and as he said, spent the next 20 years trying to earn it. But his is a story of success. He took a company, kind of a sleepy company, and in 20 years, the performance of that company was 4 times better than the market. Completely transformed it, beat all the competition, and that company is Kimberly-Clark. And if you've heard that story, you know that he represents a Level 5 leader, someone that we don't really know much about. He's not in the news. Of his era, the CEOs like maybe Jack Welch and others had bigger profiles and personalities, but what he did was actually work behind the scenes and get the job done very effectively, and with a lot of humility. This idea of personal humility and a fierce resolve in his professional life was really the hallmark of Level 5 leadership. And I'm arguing that marketers today need the same humble approach to leadership of brands. That we have a lot to learn still, but there is a lot of knowledge out there that we can learn and apply to make our brands more effective. So I hope that these 5 tips that I'm going to share with you today, and this idea of Level 5 leadership of your brand, will resonate. So I'm not a one-man show, and much of what I'm sharing with you is out there for you to learn if you haven't already discovered some of this work. There's been a revolution in marketing of the past decade, and I think we've gotten a lot smarter. Unfortunately, I don't think we've gotten a lot better. But what a great opportunity for us to learn some of these lessons, apply them, and essentially beat our competition. And in your world, that is getting more and more applications and more students in your institutions that are of the quality that you want. So the people here that have influenced me, it probably starts with Byron Sharp. Byron wrote the book, How Brands Grow. He runs the Ehrenberg Bass Institute in Australia. And he came on the scene full of personality, some would say ego, but definitely certitude in his theories, which we would call the laws of growth, which are a series of case studies after case study after case study that really shows, almost like the laws of gravity, that there's a predictable pattern to how brands grow. And I won't go into all the details today, but it is a phenomenal book that actually is really hard to read. If you can get the Cliff Notes or look for talks that sort of go into detail, it's even better. But if you like, detailed reading, it's good. It is evidence-based, so the numbers are there, the math is there, and he busts a lot of myths of marketing. The other people who've come on the scene and written extensively are Peter Field and Les Binet, and they are practitioners of marketing as well as professors and learners at the IPA, based in the UK. And their seminal work, the long and short of it, is really transformational in our understanding of long-term brand building and short-term brand building. And then the person that pulls all this together in the most entertaining way, controversial way, is Mark Ritson. He is, a columnist. He is a professor. He has a PhD in marketing, and he is someone that I would encourage you to follow if you don't already. And he, takes these principles and makes them real as practitioners and brand managers, which I think we all are, and brings those to life. So those are my influences today, and I won't do as good a job as they do, but hopefully you will learn something from it. And I just want to, in addition, one of the body of work here, and the reason I think I can add a little bit of value is they do show that the laws of brand growth are universal. It doesn't matter the category. It doesn't matter that you're selling a 4-year college experience or education, or you're selling, paper towels. There are some laws that we can all learn from and follow and apply. And hopefully that gives some credibility to what we're going to talk about. So let's start with what is a brand. I was able to do a good search across the landscape of higher education, and there's a few that sort of pop onto my radar just from where I am in the world and what I see. But the way I think about a brand is really there's two pieces of it, and it's something that we all have to work with in our own organizations, which is what is the distinctive, famous asset. What are your assets that you want to make famous, as these obviously world-class brands have done? How can you simplify it and make sure that it is a unique shortcut to the consumer as to associating it with your brand? So when you see the half-bitten apple, you immediately know it's Apple and it's technology and it's simple. So distinctiveness. I have to admit, in the world of higher education, there's not much there. You start looking at one after another, and they kind of all start looking the same. And so I think that is something that we can, look at and try to improve upon. And we're not all going to be Apple, but how is it that we can really sweat our distinctive assets to make sure, from color coding to simple design, that we communicate and cut through the clutter that is out there. Next is difference. So what is difference? It is a meaning that the consumer holds with your distinctive asset. They attach it to something. When I see Disney, I think of magic. Just one word, it kind of comes to mind: magic and film. And then I have all these other associations with that brand. We sometimes think that is where we should spend most all of our time. And a number of brands have gone down the path of purpose-driven branding and really focusing deeply on, their brand standing out from the crowd over certain things. It's really more about difference in your category. What is it that you really want to stand for? And how can you make it really simple for the consumer? So relative to your competition, and we all have different competitive sets, if I'm Coca-Cola, how do I stand out just a little bit more than Pepsi or other brands in that category, and mean a little bit more than they do on territory that matters to consumers? And so that's something that we all have to figure out for ourselves. But those two concepts: do we have a distinct brand asset that I can use over and over consistently, and can I build meaning into that asset that means something a little bit different than my competition? And why is it important? Well, our consumers are bombarded by brands left and right. And so I have a little example here of 2 brain scans. This was a study done in Germany, and they showed one audience of consumers a very strong brand in its category, and they showed another audience of consumers a very weak brand in its category. And so which of these, you have one on the left that's marked K3 and one on the right marked B1. Which of these do you think saw the strong brand in the category? And I'm just going to have to pop out of this for a minute so I can go to the StreamYard. Sorry that it's, and just see, can someone kind of monitor chat if you want to put some thoughts in there? Not seeing anything there, but if you have so we have different, I see a K3, left or right, giving you just a minute to absorb it, and then I'll go back here. So the answer is most people would guess, and it's appropriate that they would guess K3 because that brain is lighting up. The real answer is the right side, B1. So why is that? Well, strong brands limit the amount of work that you have to do as a consumer. And there's a great book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, that talks about this. This really is what brands do. They imprint themselves on the brain so that you don't have to work very hard. And that's really all of our jobs. How can we make our brands so easy to come to mind when that consumer is in a buying situation? So my friend Homer Simpson here and his tiny brain is really like all of us. We are cognitive misers. We do not want to give attention to brands. And we're so close to our categories. We're thinking all the time about it. The consumer is trying to avoid you and really doesn't want to think about you very much. And easiest way is to say, how often have you thought about brands of paper towels, toothpaste? You really haven't thought very much about it. The moment that you give it any thought is the moment you run out of it, or the moment you're standing at the shelf and you have to make a choice. I would argue that, believe it or not, that colleges are not much different, and it's hard to believe that, but there is a lot of heart and soul poured into the college search. I'm aware of that, but for that, I have a 15-year-old son. He's doing everything he can to push that conversation away. And so when you think about your consumers, and that's parents, and I'm sure college counselors and all of the stakeholders that are involved in that decision, most of them aren't thinking very much about your category. And the ones that do think, when they do get to that situation, they're only going to think about the things that are already in their brain. So that's our goal, right? Is to get in their brains and make it easy for them to think about us in those rare moments. And I heard your prior guest say this, and it's very true. Building emotion, we'll talk about that in a moment, but most brand choices are not rational. They're just not. They are an emotional choice. They're already built in to the subconscious and consumers, and when they make that choice of where I'm going, they'll have all kinds of reasons as to why they make it, but it really probably comes down to an emotional choice, and how important that is to associate with your brand. So we know what a brand is. We know why it's important, and then we have to go communicate it. Man, as the landscape changed from the days of a few channels to just thousands and thousands of channels, ways that consumers communicate with one another, ways that brands are able to touch them. The lines are blurring between those channels so that TV and social media may become the same thing. It's really a daunting landscape for us marketers as we look at it. There's more and more ways to connect with our consumer. So it should be pretty good, right? So we have a brand, we have a message, and we can blast it out through 30 different pipes to all of our consumers. We must be doing a really, really good job. Unfortunately, we're not. This comes from the IPA work of the past decade plus, and it unfortunately hasn't gotten better here in 2020. But effectiveness of marketing and that's defined here by the business effects of the investments in marketing across the landscape. Again, this is a huge data set of all kinds of categories and brands, has been falling. It has been falling. And part of that is due most likely to short-termism. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But short-term versus long-term is really how we look at, our branding and the efforts of brand building. And it's no coincidence that the short-termism rise and the effectiveness fall may be going together. So how can we do something that interrupts that? And how can we, for our own institutions and organizations, build better brands and do so effectively? I have 5 traits that I'd like to talk about. Before I get into them, this is really the seminal chart from the long and short of it. And it talks about brand building versus activation, sales activation. And brand building is typically long-term. It is typically a more emotional message, and it is using and building that message with your distinctive assets that I talked about earlier. And it's really hard to get an ROI on that. It really is hard. It's a holy grail of marketing, but we know that that long-term emotional brand building with a lot of reach across your consumer base over the long term, it drives growth and it reduces price sensitivity, which is another big effect to make your brand worth more so that you can charge more. On the other hand is sales activation. These tend to be the tactics that we use, and they are important. They're tactics we use that provide an immediate sales response. If we drop the price by 15%, you're going to get a sales response to that. If you target people in the buying moment directly with maybe a very rational message, you can get a response to that. And we get really good at metrics here. We can get great metrics on response rates and engagement, and with our digital universe, we can get a lot of data. And I believe what has happened over the past, decade or more is, as the landscape has changed and so many tools have become available, this ROI and short-term sort of sales effect is easy to measure, and so we've probably tilted the balance a little bit over to that left side. And if you think of those spikes as sort of quarters in a year, over the course of a year, that spike, that looks like a better approach. You're getting results, and those spikes are higher than the blue line, which represents long-term brand building. But if you take a step back and think over 3 to 5 years, the blue line swamps the short-term line. So the reason it's called the long and the short of it is it's arguing that we have to do both, and they actually tell you exactly how much to do. So in their research, they found that you should spend roughly 60% of your budget on that long-term brand building every year. And you should spend roughly 40% on that sales activation targeted at the right moments, at the right consumers, to get that short-term effect. And that the combination of those two things is going to provide the best results over the long term. And so this is a real key principle that that I think we can all look at. And in your world, I think about long-term emotional brand building. And I just have to say, as I went and looked out and prepared for this and looked at what is out there, there ain't much. So it's a huge opportunity. Although I did hear the prior speakers say, that you're wrapping that emotional messaging up, and I think that's excellent. And so finding ways to do that long-term emotional brand building is key. So what are the 5 things that I hope you can take away and put into practice? First, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but you really do have to do some work on your brand. Know your brand. What are its distinctive assets? I've seen and explored a number of higher education visual identities. And what I see is some do it really well. I put the Michigan logo on there earlier because I think they actually do a really good job of knowing their color codes and their simple icon, and they use it over and over again. As I go into others, I see a lack of, it's not as distinctive, it's not as sharp. There's a fragmentation oftentimes. You might have a different look when you go into the athletics space of your brand. You might have a different look in certain academic programs. And then there's the sort of the master brand institution. What I would say is you've got to be consistent and you have to build distinctiveness. This is an area where your creative teams, graphic design teams can be a great partner. And then the hard part is that consistency and just driving it over and over again. That's on the distinctive side of it. On the meaning side of it, and I've done a number of these, is what do we mean? What do we want to stand for? And it can't be a lot of things. It can probably be a few things that you can meaningfully differentiate from your consumer. It requires some research. It requires understanding your target market and your consumer, and knowing what that little bit of differentiation. I heard earlier, smaller class sizes, a more personal attention. It can be fun. It can be any number of value traits that would probably come out of consumer research. But deciding what that is, and then getting the whole organization to buy into it and understand it, articulate it, and bring it to life in their part of your brand world is just so critical. So knowing your brand before, if you don't do anything, that's sort of step one. And most of you will know, most people, marketers know if their brand is in a good place in this front, or they need a little bit of work. And if you need a little bit of work, you might have to keep the trains running while you do it, but you have to dive in on that work of know what your brand is and what it means. Connect emotionally. Emotions drive choice. This again is from the IPA. A huge number of case studies. Once again, over the long term, emotional campaigns win every single time, and the gap gets bigger over time. So if you consistently connect an emotional message to your brand, and emotions don't have to mean crying, that can mean uplifting, it can mean fun, it can be laughter. There's so many different ways to bring it to life, but consistently done over time, emotional advertising is going to win. And I see so much rational advertising in the world of higher ed. My own alma maters are there. There is a role, I realize, for connecting the dots on, the best of the top 10 lists, different rational reasons to believe. And there's a time and place to use that. I think when we talked earlier about sales activation and sort of when you're closer to that decision making, those rational points can be helpful selling points. But in the long term, in the big picture, that emotional advertising done consistently, and again, like I said, spending a good portion of your budget on that is what's going to win. Now, the flip side of that, so you have all this emotional advertising. That's what is the top of the funnel. It's making a broad audience aware of your brand and consider your brand. So awareness, consideration, that's what a lot of that drives. What I talked about earlier was the other side of the equation. You still have to focus on those short-term things. And I think many of you are experts in this area. You know your consumers and you know what works to recruit them. You know the times that they're thinking about the college choice. So you're targeting them at certain ages. It may be athletics might be an angle that is a trigger point. Going to an athletic camp, experiencing the athletics of a university that makes that consideration turn into action, into choice. Knowing where your brand fits in, and being really sharp in this area, associating your brand with those moments. and I hesitate to really spend a whole lot of time on here because I think you guys are the experts in the triggers in your category and how how to activate them. But I want to acknowledge how important it is. Right, we think it's roughly 40% of the brand building model, and so what I would say though is a lot of people are most likely doing 80% of their time on this and 80% of their budget on just this because and as I showed in that earlier chart, it feels good, it gets results year to year, but it's kind of a hamster wheel. You do it, you do it, you do it. If you don't have that background emotional branding working, it's just not gonna. It's just going to continue to be hard. When you have both working in concert, that's where growth happens. Number 4, investing appropriately. So I mentioned the 60-40 rule. 60% of your investment in long-term brand building, 40% in short-term activation. There's a little bit more nuance to that, which is reaching broad target markets. And I gave this some thought, to this category of, how broadly can you go? And I'm sure there's some constraints geographically. I wouldn't advise you to advertise in states that are so far away that it's not going to make sense. So you'll know who your consumer pool is, but in general, avoiding on the bigger messaging, avoiding hyper targeting is better, and targeting a broad target audience. Investing a majority of the budget in emotional messaging and balanced investment and activation. And then a very important point is diversifying across channels. It's been shown that when it comes to channels, more is more. So if I have a campaign around YouTube, and then I add on Facebook, and then I add on PR, and I add on other activities, as I get more channels all cohesively telling the same message, it gets even better effects. And so diversifying to the extent your budget allows, diversifying across channels, more is more. And then always being on against the purchase cycle. So I'm sure in your business when people are, when are those key moments? When are those key moments where decisions are made, and make sure you're appropriately investing in those moments, but don't forget the rest of the year. The rest of the year is important to build that consideration, and don't target so much of your budget that you are kind of go dark for a period of time. So always being on is part of that investment and media planning that I'm sure takes place. And then finally, be boring. Be boring. Do it over and over again. Consistency. So many times people will say, we've got to change something. It's getting old. And I would always question that. Your consumers, as we said earlier, they're not thinking about you very often. I still love to see commercials that are 5 years old when they make me smile. There's really not a good reason to change your distinctive assets from, the Michigan M to some other version of it. There has to be a really, really good reason to change that. So be boring and consistent over time. Be long-term oriented. You have to have commitment with this model. You have to, that you're going into it investing for the long term. And so there can be short-term variances, but if you stay the course, it will pay off in the long term. Unswayed by fads. Fads come and go, certainly in the media landscape, but, just being very disciplined in reaching your consumers over and over again. And I call that ready, aim, and fire. There is a lot of moving parts these days, certainly with the pandemic, but there's been a lot of moving parts, and taking the discipline to take your time with a long-term lens, looking at your brand, applying these principles, and then continuing to do it over and over again, rather than whipsawing from year to year, which unfortunately tends to be more and more often these days in the world of marketing. So those are my 5 tips. I think that's That's level 5 brand management. You start with your brand. You know it. You do it well. You connect emotionally, but then you could balance that with activating triggers. You invest appropriately, and you just be boring and do it over and over again because you're going to be so successful. And then I guess finally with this is, I think what it allows you to do with this approach is you should have a seat at the table with the rest of the functional areas. And that could be the CFO, that could be the president. And marketing can really bring to those audiences value through this if there's a long-term orientation, and actually secure more investment because it could be you're not investing enough in your brand building. And this model and this research sort of says it's a prerequisite for growth. So with that, I will happily take questions.
Matt, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Yeah. One of the things that I appreciate most, you started off and you said, I'm not from this industry, but we learned yesterday with Natalie Nixon. She said, we should disrupt our way of thinking by bringing in those from the outside. So it's the perfect bookend to Natalie kicking us off to have somebody outside of the industry giving us these tips. So we really appreciate you being here today.
Absolutely.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Matt, in like 30 seconds, you manage a massive brand, right? One that I might or may not have in my bar today. What has been, in your experience so far, like the one single most challenging part of managing this brand?
Okay, 30 seconds. Thank you. I'm sorry I took too much time.
You're fine.
I would say that word consistency and, be boring, as I said, is the hardest thing to guard against. We operate all around the world. We have marketers in 170 countries. And, everybody, as I said, wants to change the world. And sometimes the best action is to not do anything differently. So that's a challenge that we manage all the time.
That's fantastic. Well, Matt, again, thank you so much for joining us today, for being, as Lauren mentioned, the bookend, right, to some pretty incredible content over the last 2 days. We really appreciate everything that you are doing and what you brought to the table today.
Excellent. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Lauren!
We've come to the end already, Heather.
I feel like time has flown. Are you guys ready for day 3 and 4? I can't wait.
Let's bring it on.
I know. I feel like we have so much great content. Oh my goodness. But before we shut it down for 2021, let's do some giveaways.
Let's do it. I think we got a couple left.
Okay.
So the first one, thank you guys so much for hashtagging Innovate 2021 all over LinkedIn. I've really enjoyed seeing everyone's posts. But right now we want to recognize Edward Wright, who will be winning an all access masterclass pass.
Congrats, Ed.
Edward is from Newman University. So Edward, congratulations. We look forward to hearing from you on how you put that masterclass pass to good use.
It's fantastic. It is not too late. If you guys want to get in on supporting the Boys and Girls Club of America and the National Urban League, you can do so at capture.buzz/donate. Support some pretty amazing organizations. We have one last announcement. We mentioned multiple times that we would be providing 2 institutions of attendees for the conference with a $500 scholarship to help support their enrollment efforts. And so I want to be able to go ahead and share which institutions have been selected from the pool of attendees. The first $500 scholarship is going to Anna Miner at Colby Sawyer College. Congrats.
Awesome.
Sawyer. We hope that this helps bring another student to the table for you and gain access to your incredible institution. The second $500 scholarship, last but certainly not least, is going to Craig Chamberlain from Pacific Lutheran College. So $500 scholarship to support one of their prospective students in attending Pacific Lutheran College. So that brings us, Lauren, to the end.
It's time to say our goodbyes.
It is time. I'm going to start singing.
Well, we didn't get it from Wes, so somebody should.
I know. First, I feel like we've had some amazing presenters who have brought incredible content that I hope have left all of you with things to think about and things to bring back to your campus over the last 2 days of Innovate. Thank you so much to our session presenters, to our keynotes. Thank you so much to the folks behind the scenes. You saw Brandon pop in for a minute there earlier today, but we have our entire marketing team has been working around the clock for months in preparation for bringing Innovate 2021 to you virtually. And so I just want to give a round of applause to our marketing team. We couldn't do it without them. Oh my gosh. And Lauren, before we thank everyone else, I just want to thank you. It has been so fun co-emceeing with you.
I know. I love any time I get to spend time with you.
I can't wait until we can be in person. I can hug your neck.
Soon.
Oh my gosh. And for all of you, I'm sorry, Lauren, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we've had such a crew watching us over the past 2 days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel so privileged, right, to be a part of a community. We've had over 1,000 people representing nearly 500 institutions across the United States that have joined us for the last 2 days to really come together and innovate. So thank you so much for providing us with the opportunity, giving us the time that we know is so precious in your work life and your home life, et cetera. We are thrilled to have shared the last couple of days with you. And as a teaser, be on the lookout for all of the details that will be coming for Innovate 2022. I think that I can say on behalf of both Lauren and I and the rest of the Capture family that we can't wait to see you there. Have a great day. Thank you again. Get out there and innovate.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, all.